It's been 74 days since the conclusion of the 2026 season, and since then, it's been nothing but mock drafts and waiting for this moment right here. In about 30 minutes, the Raiders will be on the clock waiting for maybe a Mendoza pick, maybe IU gets that #1. I don't know. We'll find out. We've got a lot of experts to talk about, but my name's Jake Helton, and welcome into the UINDY TV Draftcast. Alongside me, Caden Colford. Next to him is going to be Charles Foster. We'll be analyzing and giving a little bit of our opinion on each pick and maybe doing a little bit of predicting as well. But before that, we're going to throw it over to our main man, our NFL insider, ESPN. They've got Mel Kiper, us over here at UINDY TV. We've got Jace Hodge. Jace, welcome into the Draftcast, and let's go ahead and get started with our first group of players.
Appreciate the kind words, Jake, and we have two more insiders that will join us. We'll have numerous insiders over the course of the draft as players get picked. We'll have them come up, talk about those players. We have our first two, though, Jackson Strasburger, Caitlin Miner, talking about some of our explosive players here for the NFL draft. Jackson, we'll begin with you. You are our pass catchers guy. There's three main guys. There's Lemon, there's Tate, and there's Jordan Tyson. Of those three guys, which one is your favorite and why?
I think easily you got to go Cardinal Tate. He's done the most with the most time there. He's had Jeremiah Smith to his right and still been able to produce at such a high level. He's got some of the best hands we've seen, some of the best routes. He's so quick off the line, that first step. His 40 time might not be pretty, but that first step helps him so much. It helps him gain so much ground.
And I have to ask you about the tight ends. I think me and you are in the very same boat here. The one tight end that is the main guy is Kenyon Sadiq for this first round tonight. Sadiq, I don't think you're a big fan of him.
No, I'm not a big fan of any of the tight ends in this draft, and I don't think Sadiq is #1 either. I would go Eli Stowers, and I don't think he's a first-round pick. Sadiq, yes, I think if he was a wide receiver, I think you take him, I think he'd be very good. He's just too small, can't block, doesn't do what a tight end needs to do, and if he's going to do well in the NFL, he needs to either get a little bigger or switch positions, be a little slot receiver, be able to sit down and play a little different.
And then for a guy that you think is underrated, I think the name Casey Concepcion's come up so far.
Yeah, I think he's got the skills, the talent. His big issue has been the drop rate, and I think that part of the reason is his quarterback was Marcel Reed, who is not very good at Texas A&M. And then you go to a great wide receiver. He's a leader. He's got the ability. He's got the athleticism. And if he can fix that drop rate, I think he's easily the #1, possibly #2 receiver in this class.
Question from over here, a guy that I've watched quite a bit as an Ohio State guy has been Carnell Tate, and while he's been very impressive, he's been a second or third option pretty much his entire career. So I guess the big question that I have is he worth that top 10 pick? Because more than likely, wherever he goes in that top 10, right now I'm really looking at Washington. I love their pace of play, and I think he would fit great in there. He's already worked with NFL coordinators at Ohio State. Not as much of a transition offensively for him. But I just question, is he going to fit in and be worth that top 10 spot as a number 2 option for Washington?
Yeah, like I said, he's been a #2 his entire career, and he's still put up this fantastic numbers. 121 receiving yards, catches for 1,800 yards. And in a 1.5% drop rate, he's been the guy you can go to when Jeremiah Smith's covered. And Ohio State has been that receiver as of recently. I think he can be a #1, possibly a #2 receiver right on day one.
We'll see where these receivers and tight end fall over the course of the night. Now, Caitlin, we'll throw it to you. You are our running backs person for tonight, and there's really two guys that names have popped up so far, both from the same college, Notre Dame, Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price. The main question right now is how high does Jeremiah Love actually go?
You know, most people think that Jeremiah's going to go top 5 easily, if not top 10. I don't see him going any lower than that. There are a few different teams that are eyeing him. Some people are saying Arizona, some people are voting Titans or Giants, and I think any of those teams would be a good, addition with him as a running back, but it's just who are the Cardinals going to go with? Are they going to go with Jeremiah? It's the big debate.
Yeah, I mean, for the Cardinals, no one even knows that they're going to be at 3 come the time that they're on the clock because they've been trade back candidate for most of the night so far, and Jeremiah Love could really go anywhere between that 3 and 10 range. You would anticipate that he would be a top 10 pick given how good he was with the Irish. The other Irish guy, though, is Jadarian Price. Obviously, he had to split, maybe even call it 60-40 in favor of Love reps at Notre Dame, but Price, there's a reason he's going to be maybe a first-round talent.
Yeah, I definitely think he'll go in the first round. I'm not sure if he'll be as high as Jeremiah. Obviously, we said he's kind of a top 10 guy, but A team that I think has been eyeing him or that's been talked about is the Seahawks, which I believe are the number 32 pick. So that's into the first round. It's just, is he going to go today or is he going to go tomorrow or Saturday?
And the Seahawks, they did lose Kenneth Walker to free agency, so that would be a sensible pick for them to get the running back of the future. Guys, what do you think about the running backs?
I think the first round, a running back is always going to raise some questions, right? It took all of the best player in the nation, and Ashton Genty, to even sniff that top 10 for a long time. It's not something you usually see, and that's not to discredit the talent of Love at all. He was one of the best backs we've seen in a long time at Notre Dame, but with the injury rate that we see at the running back position, it's always a gamble for these teams to throw millions of dollars of a pick in that top 5. And for a lot of these teams, if you don't already have that established quarterback, don't already have that established offensive system, you never know what you're really going to get, upside-wise in a running back. So I'll praise the Stones of any team that goes that way in this draft, but it's never an easy decision to make.
And I think the big thing that we can look at for teams that take running backs and how it doesn't always go that way is, if you look at a team like the Chargers last year taking Omarion Hampton at running back, I mean, you saw Vidal came in and kind of took over as that running back 1 or running back 1.5 for the Chargers, and that was a guy that wasn't super highly touted. So, I mean, it's one of those things like, running backs can come from anywhere, and unless you have a generational talent like the Raiders did with Ashton Genty last year, it's hard for me to take a running back. And could Jeremiah Love be that generational talent? Absolutely, but I mean, it's really, it's a high stock, especially at pick number 3 for a Cardinals team that I think is a lot more than a running back away from being good. I think that they have a lot more things to fix before they get there.
I think defense would definitely be the better decision for them. But staying on Jeremiah Love, the story that I heard today from Marcus Freeman, they had him on the little game day thing they were doing earlier before the draft, and he was talking about how Jeremiah Love was at a celebration of life with his family a couple of months ago, and his dad saw him not only picking up the trash, but cleaning up plates, taking things out, or taking the garbage out to the curb, and just showing that this hasn't really changed his mentality. He's still a humble guy. He's still the guy he was before he got to NIL. Now he's going to be in the NFL draft, and I think that says a lot about his character. He's very humble, and then some of the plays that you see on the field I think really tell you a lot about his character. Thinking about that run versus Navy. He was basically on the ground, spun up a 56-yard touchdown. Nobody thought he was going to get there, but he did. And I think that's the biggest thing about him is he believes in himself more than anybody, and it radiates. His coach believes in him. His quarterback believes in him. The offensive line believes in him. And I think a team like the Cardinals could honestly use it, but my prime spot for him is definitely the Titans. Nobody else other than the Titans could use him more.
The Titans could absolutely use a running back. That's Jackson. That's Caitlin. They are pass catchers and running backs. We'll flip things over to Landon and Heaven when we come back on the NFL Draftcast UINDY TV.
We have made it through our first two groups, but it's time to move over to the defensive side because I think this is where one of the biggest questions is going to be raised. The next two picks after Mendoza, there's a lot of question marks of where people are going to go. Jace, you've got the experts. Let's hear what they have to say.
Heaven Thompson for DBs and Landon McQuitty for the edge rushers and the linebackers. We'll get to the edge rushers momentarily. Landon, but first, the defensive backs, Heaven. We have, Caleb Downs, the safety. People thought he's maybe worthy of a first overall pick, but he might not go even top 5. What's your thoughts on Caleb Downs?
I personally love Caleb Downs. He's an elite communication person. He's such a big leader on the field, and you just notice it throughout his teammates. His teammates often look for him. He's huge on communications. He had 2 interceptions in each of his 3 years of college, which is outstanding. I think it's hard to see something like that, especially when you're looking to draft somebody coming out of college. He thinks fast, he moves fast, and he just finishes plays.
You look at the corners now, and there's a few names that could raise some eyebrows, but no one maybe that is above the rest right now at corner.
Corners, this is one a little iffy for me. I'm going to pick the underdog, D'Angelo Ponce. I'm going to pick him just because I'm an Indiana girl. I'm an Indiana person. I love watching Indiana football, and I think D'Angelo has the quick feet. Although he is a smaller corner, I would say. He is smaller, but I say that he's very versatile, especially in man and zone, and he has the footwork to beat some of those bigger receivers.
Guys, I want to throw it over to you talking about the corners and defensive backs. I know you're an Ohio State guy. You know a lot about Caleb Downs, but I also have guys like Mansour Delane who can be very good at corner.
I think the big thing for Caleb Downs is he's not scared to go downhill. He's not scared to put a shoulder down and make a big play. And I think we really saw that towards the end of the season. Ohio State's defensive line was struggling a little bit towards the end. They were making plays here and there, but it was really the secondary that picked up that slack, and I felt like that was all headed off by Caleb Downs. He was a great leader for this team, and I heard earlier Nick Saban said he was his favorite player he ever coached. That's coming from the GOAT, in my opinion. He said he's his favorite player to ever be in an Alabama uniform under Nick Saban. Those are high praises, and I think if you're an NFL scout, NFL coach, that just makes me that much more confident in picking this guy. I know you said he was a first-round pick or a number 1 pick. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but, I mean, New York, you're sitting there at 5. You just traded Dexter Lawrence. You've got to grab this guy at number 5. There is no way you can let him slide. No way.
I really like him, and I think that Heaven hit the nail on the head when she talked about his continued excellence at the collegiate level. It wasn't just one season, was not just a senior year, but he was playing one of the toughest schedules in college football every year, and he was close to one of those guys that could really take away a receiver, if not take away a decent portion of the field all by himself. I mean, aside from having the knack for making the big play, he's going to do everything under the radar as well. He's going to keep guys from getting open. There's not going to be a lot of balls in his way to begin with.
Let's talk the edge rushers now and linebackers with Landon McQuitty. Landon, there is a lot of talent in this group. You have Sonny Styles at linebacker, and then you have the 3 main edge rushers, David Bailey, Arvell Reese, Ruben Bain. How do you see those guys panning out in the draft here?
Yeah, that's really the main discussion with these edge rushers. Those 3 edge rushers, the guys that I was really focused on. And Arvell Reese, David Bailey, those are the 2 guys that the Jets are really thinking about with that number 2 pick. I feel like Arvell Reese, far more versatile, can maybe check more boxes for the Jets. But going with David Bailey, we heard it before the game where I heard Charles talking. You can't be mad at getting David Bailey by any means whatsoever. And Ruben Bain obviously is a very intriguing prospect. He's obviously got those shorter arms, so it'll be interesting for me to see where he goes and see if teams will maybe be able to overlook that.
And Landon, I have a question. Looking at you, there's one kind of wild card in here, a guy that's kind of a freak athlete, Sonny Styles, someone that some people are really high on, some people are not high on. What do you think is the fit for Sonny Styles, a guy that has kind of jumped onto the scene and not necessarily in that top 3 that you were talking about, but for some people, he's their best linebacker?
Yeah, absolutely. What makes him so good is the length, the speed. He's so versatile. He's really a unicorn at that linebacker position. He can do so many things at so many different levels, and overall, the versatility is what makes him such a great player, and he obviously, highly touted prospect, should be one of the higher picks in this draft as well.
Let's talk fits, and let's talk maybe a little bit of trade action. We haven't mentioned anything yet, but I will say that this pick just looks too exciting, just a little bit too exciting for let's say maybe the Dallas Cowboys to maybe trade up and make a little defensive push. They allowed 6.1 yards per play last year. I mean, that's absolutely insane. I mean, those numbers, the defense was atrocious. It was the reason why they lost football games. So if I'm Dallas, taking that first pick, and I think I'm going to maybe trade up, try and get a little bit of a more a blue chip type of player, someone that's going to change the entirety of the defense. They need to replace someone like Micah Parsons, and that's hard to do. I think this guy, Sonny Styles, is the guy to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Dallas, their defense since losing Micah Parsons, something they've been trying to work on retooling. They got Quentin Williams throughout the season last year, sort of a midseason pickup. They did a lot for their defense, but still a lot of work to do. They have the offense with Dak Prescott running the offense, and CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens just signed under that franchise tag. They just need to fill out that defense. I think they're definitely a viable option to trade up.
Stick with me here, Landon. How about a little comparison for David Bailey out of Texas Tech? How about Trey Hendrickson? A bit of the, I think the big complaint for the Bengals out of Trey Hendrickson was he couldn't stop the run, man. I mean, it was absolutely atrocious. Every team was just running right at him. Yes, he was getting in the backfield. Yes, he was getting those tackle for losses, the sacks, this, that, and the other, but he wasn't stopping the run. Now, you're going to look at Dexter Lawrence's stats and say, well, yeah, he doesn't have the forced fumbles. He doesn't have the sacks. He doesn't have the tackle for losses, but what he does have, he can stop the run, and that's exactly what the Bengals needed. And I look at David Bailey as a similar player to that, to a Trey Hendrickson. So if I'm the Jets, a team that had one interception last year, was atrocious at pressuring the quarterback, I don't know that this is the guy I go for. Arvell Reese, he was in the backfield every single play, pressuring quarterbacks. Caleb Downs, I don't know if he's as good as he is without the pressure of that Ohio State front four. Same thing at Alabama. Pressure is what causes interceptions. The Jets had absolutely zero pressure last year, and this is the difference maker. If you get someone who's in the backfield, makes the quarterback make a couple bad plays, makes him make a bad throw here and there, that gives your secondary a chance to pick it off. Just make a play, get a deflection here and there. Those are game-changing plays, and that's a game-changing player. Arvell Reese, that would be my second pick if I was the Jets. Hot on the clock, I'm going Arvell Reese.
Arvell Reese, obviously very effective in that, but when you look at David Bailey, 20% in pressure rates, obviously atop the leaders in the NCAA, atop the leaders in sacks as well. Two very good options. Like I mentioned, I feel like Arvell Reese checks more boxes. I feel like that would be the number 2 pick if I was running that organization, but like I said, can't be really too upset at either of these players.
We'll see how the cookie crumbles for those edge rushers. That's Landon. The Raiders are officially on the clock. We'll be back for the start of the UINDY TV NFL Draftcast.
The Raiders have pretty much been on the clock for 74 days, Caden, and there's a lot of thinking that comes in that time. And I think the biggest thing right now is Raiders just need to keep it simple. Don't need to overthink it. Just take Mendoza, take the for sure #1 option. Am I right in saying that?
You know, I think so. You're always going to take the few phone calls, right? When you find that first pick, you're going to get a few, say, hey, what this? How's this sound? Is this nice? What do you think about this? But I'm thinking about a possible franchise quarterback here and the national championship winning Fernando Mendoza. I don't think you go wrong here with the first pick. I don't know if he's #1 if we're in 2025 or in 2024 or in 2023, but this year Fernando Mendoza is that guy to take with the #1 pick, and as a proven winner, I don't mind it at all.
And Charles, as we look at Mendoza, he's been a big benefactor of the RPO, and me personally, I'm a guy that thinks he probably shouldn't start off starting in the NFL week 1. The Raiders picked up Kirk Cousins. That's his kind of player comparison and will be his mentor. I really like that, but what's your opinion on him playing week 1 come September?
I think week 1, it's one of those things where you see some teams that they're very quick to throw you into the fire at times, and I think that can really, really hurt other teams because we see it where they're so willing to put you right into the game, and a player will either get hurt or they won't play well. And I think that, like you mentioned, you kind of want to give him that opportunity, give him the opportunity to kind of mesh, learn under Kirk Cousins because he has amazing weapons. I mean, on paper, having Brock Bowers, who's a top 3 tight end in the league, having Ashton Jeanty, who is going to be a top 5 running back someday. I mean, the weapons on paper are so good, and I think that if Fernando Mendoza can get situated, he has a very good chance to start off his career in a pretty good place, similar to what we saw with Drake May, where he was surrounded by weapons whenever they spent a little bit of time to get him some people.
And as we look at Mendoza, I think it's safe to say that he has improved every single year, but the jump he made with Kirk Cignetti was bigger than just about any player this year. I'll throw this over to our specialist, Jace Hodge, alongside with Nate Long, our quarterback specialist. But guys, I'll leave you with this question. Did he improve enough to be the #1 overall pick? I know that might sound like a silly question, but Joe Burrow was a #1 pick. There's a lot of hype that comes around with this pick, and you are held to a different standard. Is he going to reach that standard, Nate?
Well, when you look at Fernando Mendoza at Cal, 9-10 as a starter, didn't have the greatest touchdown to interception ratio. He wasn't a very good player. I mean, just flat out say, I mean, he had the tangibles. He could be, but when you look at him at Cal, he didn't have a lot. You move now to IU, and, well, you have a great offensive line around you. You have great weapons. You have a very veteran team, a great offensive line, which we'll talk about in a little bit. To me, I don't know if he made that jump. I think the talent around him really helped him make that jump, but he had some of that there before. So when you say those things, he was talented before at Cal. He just didn't have a lot of talent. You have the talent around him at IU. He looks great, but does there have a lot of talent for the Raiders? I think that's the question we're going to be looking at, is will he be in a good situation with the Raiders?
I mean, there is some decent talent. I mean, you heard the Brock Bowers, you heard the Ashton Jeanty. The offensive line is the big concern for me in Las Vegas. Offensive line, how can they protect Mendoza? Because the big thing for Mendoza is his accuracy. You need to give him time in the pocket, or he is not going to succeed that well. You saw that at Cal. He didn't have time in the pocket. He struggled at times. So for him, he needs to have that accuracy, the ability to have the accuracy. So the Raiders, I'm assuming they'll go Mendoza here, and I would assume that after that, they need to bulk up on the offensive line to protect him.
100%. The offensive line is the biggest thing. We look at a couple of the weaknesses of Fernando Mendoza. It's that pressure up the middle. A guy like Jared Goff, when he has the double-A blitz, it really frustrates him. When he has to get out of the pocket, he doesn't have the speed like some of the other guys in the NFL, the other guys in this draft, to get out of pressure. So when pressure's there, he doesn't have anywhere to go with it. So that's one of the question marks, I think, with Fernando Mendoza.
One thing that I noted just watching Mendoza, and especially heading into the NFL, something that you see at every single level, there's an increase in the speed, the pace of play, and how fast players are coming at you. My biggest concern with Fernando Mendoza is that he doesn't get the ball out quick enough. You talked about the accuracy, but he's standing there for 3-4 seconds. This was something that Joe Burrow had to adjust when he got to Cincinnati. The offensive line was horrible, and he was taking and holding the ball 3-4 seconds. And he got sacked like 50 times in his first 2 years, something ridiculous like that. Fernando Mendoza is going to have to adjust very quickly because he's not going to have that same level of offensive line that he did at IU. And to be fair, IU wasn't playing a ton of good defensive lines. You look to Ohio State, who they played, and then I'm looking at maybe Miami. Those are the two best offensive lines. Yes, they played them, but outside of that, played a decently weak schedule. And that offensive line held up strong. I will give them that, but I don't know that Mendoza's going to have that with the Raiders. And that's my biggest concern is if you throw him into the fire and he gets hurt or something happens where he loses his confidence, it's a wasted number 1 pick right there by the Raiders.
You know, I could watch for Fernando Mendoza's tape all day. I really could, because I don't know if there is a better pick in this draft at quarterback that I would want at 3rd and 15. We saw it all through the college football playoff. 3rd and 15, 3rd and 17, Mendoza gets it done. And yes, it was always on that the backside corner route for Charlie Becker. And the question I've been asking, was it Fernando Mendoza on the pass, or was Becker just that good of a jump ball receiver to go up and get everything? Obviously, it's a mix. But to see that efficiency with that play ran, that's an NFL-style play that you're going to need. You're going to need that one-on-one on the right side, isolated with your best receiver. I think Fernando Mendoza makes a play for you more often than not.
Lots of talk about Mendoza over here at the table, but we'll throw it to our specialist and our NFL insider, Jace Hodge, who I believe has our first pick of the 2026 NFL Draft.
See it right behind me. Fernando Mendoza is indeed heading to Vegas. For the second time in IU's history, they have a number 1 overall pick, and the Heisman winner does indeed head to Las Vegas. No surprise, Nate. All the talk we've already had about Mendoza and the Raiders, it was the fit, and that is indeed where Vegas goes.
Yeah, so you look at Mendoza, we talk a lot about the negatives. We look at the positives. He's poised in the pocket. He's tough. You saw him get knocked out of the game and come right back in. He's going to stand in there. He's going to take the hits. But also, we mentioned he's very accurate whenever he gets, in a groove, when he gets going. He can find guys all over the field. He has precision on those deep passes, as we talked about with Charlie Becker. I mean, there's a lot of things to like. And one of the biggest things that you don't see a lot these days is character, leadership. That's something that Fernando Mendoza, you just see it coming off of him. And he's going to be a great leader for the Raiders in Vegas.
I think Vegas and their fans are going to be very happy with this pick. And my question about is he ready for the number 1 pick, it's just a question because some people aren't ready. We've seen it, I think, a lot more in the NBA than the NFL. That number 1 pick has been a little bit more, you can have a lot more confidence in your number 1 pick over in the NFL. But I just think right now this is the best option for the Raiders, and it gives them the best chance for long-term success. I look at Mendoza as a Kirk Cousins type of guy, to be honest. I mean, yeah. I look at him as a franchise guy that could be with the Raiders for the next 10, 15 years playing good football.
And you also forget that with Tom Brady at the head of the entire organization, there's going to be at least a few conversations had. And who else would you want as your mentor, right? Literally the best to ever do it. And I think if there's anybody that could talk to him from a play style standpoint, he has everybody that he needs in Tom Brady, in Kirk Cousins. He's going to be just fine whether he has a few games to watch Cousins play his game or if he's thrown right in.
And then another thing to mention with Mendoza, if you watched the national championship game, you saw that game-winning dive, if you will. Plays like that get you hurt in the NFL. So I think one thing to maybe talk about is how Mendoza takes care of himself, how he prepares himself for games, how he rests after games, because college to the NFL, you're talking about every single guy weighs 50 pounds more in the NFL. You're going to have 400-pound linemen taking you down, this, that, and the other. Mendoza is going to have to get rid of the ball quick, or he's going to have a lot of sacks, and he's going to have to learn how to slide because he didn't do a lot of that in college. But,
guys, for Mendoza, he is the 4th quarterback in history to win the national title, win the Heisman Trophy, and be the number 1 overall pick. I want to see if you guys can name the other 3 quarterbacks that did that.
The other 3 quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Jameis Winston.
That's 2.
And Cam Newton.
That's 3. You see the same notification I did, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but still.
It seem a little suspenseful, but that's an elite party to be with. And
100%.
I think that gives you a lot more confidence if you're the Raiders, that just trust your gut. I think that was the biggest thing that everybody was saying this year for the Raiders was just trust your gut. Take the easy pick. Take the for sure option that is going to lead you to at least better than this year. I mean, Aiden O'Connell gotta be a little bit better than that, but we're going to go ahead and take a break real quick before we head over to our second pick. You're watching the UINDY TV Draftcast on UINDY TV. The suspense of who will be the #1 pick is over. It has been named Fernando Mendoza. But that means the Jets are on the clock. Before we get to them, though, Nate, you had one more point that you wanted to make about Mendoza. Not only did he take care of the ball, he was very efficient in the red zone. You had some stats for us. Let's hear this breakdown because I thought it was pretty impressive.
So we talked about the dive in the end zone. When the pressure is on, how well do you play? Well, you look at the red zone the last couple of years since 2024, according to PFF, 39 touchdowns for Fernando Mendoza, 0 interceptions. So when the lights are the brightest, when the coverages tighten up the most, Fernando Mendoza is a guy you want in that situation because he just gets it done.
And back over here at the desk, we have received word that our second pick is in. Jace, it seems as though our graphic is not ready just yet, so you're going to have to wait just a second longer. But before we get there, one last word on Fernando Mendoza. I think that you mentioned it, Charles. It was the weapons that he's going to have in Las Vegas. How does that benefit him, not necessarily in year one, but how does this build a foundation for the years to come?
I mean, I think it does benefit him right in year one because we're looking at a guy that now, the Las Vegas is starting to become a place you want to play. Like you said, Tom Brady's up in there. Las Vegas is becoming a good sports city. And you're seeing now Brock Bowers, like we said, was taken. He is one of the best receiving threats in the league, not just at tight end, but as a receiver overall. Ashton Jeanty is going to be an amazing RPO weapon for him because anytime Ashton Jeanty is involved in a handoff, you need to get on your toes. And I think that's going to be one of those things for them that's going to be so important because if he's struggling to throw the ball, you have a guy like Ashton Jeanty to hand it off to. If you need 5 yards, you have Brock Bowers, who's almost a guaranteed 5 yards. And, this team did lose Jacoby Myers last year, but they're starting to build. I think they're going to get a receiver later on in this draft. I think the O-line, they did actually put in some effort to fix the O-line a little bit. So I think that was really important for them, and I think that we are very, very close to seeing good things in Las Vegas. But, Jace, you said the pick is in. Who do my Jets take?
Well, they did indeed go edge rusher, and it is going to be the edge rusher as David Bailey is the name for the New York Jets. David Bailey is heading to New York. Landon, we already kind of talked about where the edge rushers would go. Would it be Arvell Reese? Would it be David Bailey? Would it even be surprising Ruben Bain? Is it being David Bailey? Is this the right fit for New York?
Well, regardless for the Jets, they do fill a need in an edge rusher. They do get David Bailey, a highly touted prospect. As I mentioned prior, had a 20.2% pressure rate that led the NCAA, 14.5 sacks that also led the NCAA, and 19.5 tackles for loss. He was second right there. So regardless, you're getting a very, very good player, a very good pass rusher. Needs to work on his run defense a little bit, but overall, can't really go wrong with that #2 pick.
When you compare him to Arvell Reese, would you have preferred him here, Arvell Reese, or was Bailey the right pick for the Jets?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I do believe that Arvell Reese kind of checked more boxes for a Jets team that still obviously has a lot of work to do, so that's the player I personally would have gone with. David Bailey, more of like a specialist in that pass rush scenario, obviously far proven in that role. That's what the Jets have seen, and that's why they decided to go with him.
I would say that the Jets might be going for a little bit of more instant success. I think they want to see a little bit more initial return on investment there because you look at Arvell Reese, I think that's the type of guy that you saw the potential, but you didn't necessarily see the output. And you're kind of gambling on him a little bit. So I could see why maybe some teams are going to pass on him. David Bailey, still a great player. I think one thing to worry about is that there are a lot of good offensive linemen in the NFL, and good technique is going to get to him. I feel like he uses his aggression just a little bit too much, and it causes him to get a little bit too far upfield sometimes, which you allow the quarterback to step up. You're talking about Lamar Jackson. You're talking about Josh Allen, guys that can get out of the pocket and run. It's kind of scary whenever you're blowing coverage like that.
I think the big thing about David Bailey is we saw it for the past few, like you said, 76 days of these two, Arvell Reese, David Bailey, who's the next Jet. And I think that Darren Muji really enjoyed his conversations with David Bailey more. He really liked him a lot. And I think that's David Bailey's been the guy for about 3 weeks now that we knew was going to go to New York, or at least expected to, barring any surprises. But like you said, there's one of those things that me and Nate talked about in the room before we went on air is there's a difference between having the measurables and having the results on the field. David Bailey is one of the few players that has both. Led the NCAA in sacks, You know, that's right there is production on field. But then you take that on top of the fact that he's elite athletically, a 4 or 5 bench, 550 squat. He is huge and he moves fast, and that right there is not something you see with some players. I mean, he's literally what people saw in Sonny Styles, but he actually got 14.5 sacks while being, you know, measurably better than a lot of other players at this thing. I'm very happy with this pick.
Charles mentions the 4.5 sacks, just about 20 tackle for losses. Caden, how does this translate into the NFL? How does this help out the secondary of the Jets?
Well, for one, I do think you are going to see that quick success, not in game one, though. As you say, this is a completely different offensive line that you're going to see in front of you. I love David Bailey in the first 2 seconds of the play. The longer the play goes, the less we're going to see his effect wear on whatever offense that he's playing at that point. But if you're the Jets, what do you need? You need a little bit of a spark. Right, Charles? You need some energy in your organization. I think David Bailey, with a couple forced fumbles in the first few weeks of the season, can really get your defense going. And when you're looking for a charge defensively, you're looking for someone to force that fumble. You're looking for someone to grab that interception. You're looking for the big play. I think David Bailey can give your team, your organization, your fans something to cheer about.
And this is a good spot to restart with. I say restart because they gave up so much during this season, I feel like, defensively, and it almost felt like, I don't want to say that they gave up, but it felt like they were definitely playing for a higher draft pick at a certain point through the season. I'll turn to you once again, Charles. I know you watched a lot of Jets football.
Unfortunately.
I know you're happy about this, but how does this change not only on the field but in the locker room? Because there's been some not only dejected Jets fans, but it's got to feel bad to be on that team that has 2-3 wins come the end of the season.
This is a team that brought in almost a brand new D-line. So we knew they were going edge. They brought in they got rid of Jermaine Johnson, sending him to the Titans, bringing in Tavondre Sweat, who was a first-round pick last year and was one of my favorite, in fact, my favorite defensive tackle in last year's draft. So, I mean, we see them, they bring in a run-stuffing tackle. You have Will McDonald, who led the team in sacks the past 2 years on the left side. Now you have David Bailey on the right side. The D-line is very good for this team. Now this is a team that needs to continue to build secondary. Without Sauce Gardner, the defense, like you said, one of the first teams ever to have 0 interceptions in the season.
When I saw that stat, that was one of the craziest. I didn't even know that was possible. I mean, to play 17 games. They added an extra game. To play 17 60-minute games and not have a single interception, something's wrong. Something is terribly wrong. So this is a good starting point for the Jets. That brings up our third pick in the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of different things could be going on with this pick. Actually, right before we went on air, I saw something that maybe the Saints could be trading up for this third pick. There are a lot of options for this pick. Caden, where do you see the Cardinals going?
Well, for the Cardinals, you're taking a dart, you're throwing a blindfold on, and you're throwing it at the board, and you might just pick whoever. Because really, this Cardinals team needs all of the above. We could go up and down, and everybody could help this team in some form or fashion. But really, I'm looking at the defense yet again. I think that it's too talented on the defensive end to not go that direction. And for a team that doesn't score a lot of points, you need to make sure that other teams aren't scoring a lot of points. Some people were seeing Jeremiah Love as high as number 3. I don't see it just yet. I think there's too much talent in Arvell Reese on the board. If you want to go crazy, you might see some Sonny Styles action.
I would not be surprised to see Sonny Styles just because I think he's that explosive of a player, but we've just received word that the pick is in, and I am just as shocked as you might be, Caden. Jace, what's the word?
Well, kind of got spoiled over there, but it's Jeremiah Love who is heading to the Arizona Cardinals. So I'm actually 3 for 3 so far on the picks that I thought it might go. Jeremiah Love, being an Irish fan, is a great home run threat kind of running back, and Arizona gets their guy at 3.
Yeah, so I know we were talking about this earlier. You didn't think Arizona was going to take Love. You thought he was going to the Giants, I believe, and then someone else said the Titans. So how do you feel about Arizona taking him?
I think it's the right fit. Obviously, they already have Tyler Algier. They already have James Conner. They already have kind of a full running back room. But you get a guy like Love to kind of be a 3-headed backfield there and try to see what he can do in the NFL. I mean, Love, I've watched him. I was at that game that someone mentioned earlier, the Navy game, where he had that crazy run. This guy can do a lot. He is very stable, very low center of gravity. And, man, this guy is going to be great in Arizona, I think, Caitlin.
Yeah, but some people say that he likes to go airborne too much and that he doesn't stay on the ground enough. So, what do you think?
I think if it works for him, it works for him. Obviously, there's a bit of an injury threat there that can be a bit of an issue. But, guys, I'm a little bit surprised the Cardinals didn't trade out of 3 here, and they actually picked Love.
I'm absolutely shocked. I said before we got through it over there, I'm shocked that someone would take a running back at this point. The state of the NFL and the way that the money is working right now in a top 5 draft pick, that's just doesn't make a ton of sense for a Cardinals team who is already, like Caden said, struggling in just about every position. And you mentioned the injury possibility. That was something that Marcus Freeman was talking about earlier today. He's got to learn to get down. He needs to know the difference between when to get those extra couple yards and when to just go down. And that's the difference between getting injured. That's the difference between playing a full season. And in the NFL, that matters a lot. That matters when you're the number 3 pick. That's why I talked about with Mendoza. Living up to an expectation, this is going to be an almost unreachable expectation for Jeremiah Love. I mean, he is expected to be better than Bijan Robinson now. That's a crazy standard.
Making the case for Love, however, he is someone that can expand your playbook. Outside of his ability for the home run play, to break one open, to get down the sideline, to find the end zone, he can also really, really work the screen game. He is probably going to enter as one of the best check down options in the league. And he has that ability, that knack for making a play. So if your offense has to start somewhere, I don't mind it being Jeremiah Love, but 3, still a reach.
A state champion sprinter in high school. You know he's got the speed. We saw the skill at Notre Dame, Charles, but I have the question, how does it translate to the NFL? Because it's 2 different levels. It's 2 different games, essentially, and he's going to be dealing with, I would say, a close to a garbage O-line.
Close to a garbage O-line indeed, other than Paris Johnson. And, I mean, you take a look at this pickup. I mean, yes, the speed is there, the talent is there, and I really do like Jeremiah Love, but yes, absolutely reach. I think it's one of those picks of they didn't want to go defense here. They were happy with some of the defensive picks, I guess, and they decided that they didn't want to risk a team like the Titans taking him. But if I'm a team like the Titans, this is a gold scar in the middle of the corner. I mean, like, Arvell Reese just fell to you at pick 4.
Yeah, that's what my next question was going to be, because this really messes things up for the Titans, at least what we thought was going to happen. But Arvell Reese, the next one up on the board. The Titans have that next pick. We'll see how the Cardinals do. I don't know that this is going to be instant success with Jeremiah Love. It could be a long-term investment where they're waiting and waiting and waiting, and then eventually he turns out to be the player they expected him to be. It's just, I feel like it's going to be a tough transition going from the best O-line in college football to a not-so-good offensive line in the NFL. But as we turn over to Arvell Reese, I think he has the highest ceiling defensively of any player in this draft class just because of the potential. But that is the word. You haven't necessarily seen the results on the field that you would like to see to take him at that 2nd, 3rd, 4th pick. Why do the Titans take him here at 4? What's the argument, Caden?
There's just too much out there, man. Too much out there. He can do way too much. For someone at 6'4", 241, he's got all the mobility that you want on the defensive end, and you're going to see it on day 1. He passes the eye test, and I think he can do a little bit of everything for you. On a defense that's, looking to sharpen a lot up and a few different places, he can play a few different places for you. He can play on each end of the field in a couple different spots. If you want to cycle in a few different rotations, play a couple different formations, he can do that for you.
And Charles, my question to you is, at Ohio State, he was playing at one of the best, or playing with one of the best defenses. He had a lot of support on that team, so that let him have a lot of freedom in his moves, a lot of freedom getting downfield. I don't know that he's going to have that same level of freedom if he goes to the Titans. How does he adjust? How does he make that change to get more discipline and into the system of the Titans?
I think the biggest thing with the system is that you can make the argument defensively that he can be the system because he can play edge, he can play linebacker, you can even play him inside if you really want to. I mean, he can do it all, and I think that is so important for a Titans team that is kind of resetting their whole defense. I mean, the defense, Snead was not an amazing pickup for them. He did not end up working out for them. Linebacker-wise, they lost a lot of their linebacker talent throughout the past few years. So, you look at a team now that's sitting there and, they just want the opportunity to build a defense. I cannot think of a better guy to build a defense around than a guy that can play literally any position but the back. And I think that is super important. And I just got Jaser Pacer in the corner over there raising his hand. That means the pick is in, number 4.
Oh, my goodness.
Tate is heading to the Tennessee Titans. For a guy that Jackson compared to Calvin Ridley, well, he's joining Calvin Ridley in Tennessee. Did not expect a receiver to go this high, not to the Titans. Yes, a receiver was a need for them, but I thought they needed an edge rusher like Arvell Reese a whole of a lot more than they needed Carnell Tate. But either way, Carnell Tate, you are now a Tennessee Titan as he joins Cam Ward, and Cam Ward gets another weapon.
I was sitting back there and not expected to be grabbed for another couple picks. But Carnell Tate, obviously will fit well with this offense. I just think this team doesn't need a wide receiver right now. I think they need defense. They need offensive line. But if they want to go wide receiver, this is the guy to go.
And they're trying to get Cam Ward some more receivers, some more threats downfield.
Absolutely, and I think that's the right option eventually. But right now, again, if you're going to go wide receiver, you went the right option. You took Carnell Tate. He will fit well with this team. He will be their number one option, maybe their number two option for now until he eventually will pass Calvin Ridley. But like I said, I kind of had him similar to Calvin Ridley. The route running, the first quick step is how he's going to beat his corners. And again, I think he fits perfectly with the Titans, though.
And, guys, I almost wonder if the Titans wanted to go Jeremiah Love, and they kind of got put in a precarious spot here at 4.
We're going to play a really, really cool game real quick called What Do You Need? I mean, we take a look at the Titans. Yes, they need Arvell Reese, but I think that they wanted Carnell Tate and realized they could not trade back. Because with the Giants sitting at 5 right now, a team that is wide receiver needy and does not need Arvell Reese, you can't move back. So either you reach or you miss out on the player that you want. And in this situation, I think that they reached for that reason because, like you said, if they let Carnell go as at number 5, then they end up being in that situation where their player that they want is gone. So I think that it was one of those things that they wanted to trade back, but they just couldn't. And I think I like this pick because they fill a need. Despite it being a reach, they fill the need at getting Cam Ward that guy because Cam Ward, his borderline stats were impressive. And with a true wide receiver 1, can be a lot better.
But see, they signed in the offseason. They signed Wan'Dale Robinson. They have A.O. Manor as well, alongside Ridley. They already had 3 decent receivers. I'm not sure that was their biggest need right now for the Tennessee Titans.
Decent receivers for a team that's trying to make their number 1 overall pick go, actually do something. I mean, we saw it with Caleb Williams. You give your number 1 overall pick a wide receiver 1 and watch him fly. And they give their number 1 overall pick a wide receiver 1, and hopefully Cam Ward can, obviously he's not as good as a situation as Williams was, but you give him the opportunity to do something compared to a defense. Yes, your defense can be better, but right now the biggest concern for the Titans is proving that Cam Ward has it in him so then they can actually solidify if he is their quarterback 1 of the future or if they need to start going back to the drawing board.
Really, I like it.
I like it too.
I took some convincing, and the convincing was just watching his tape. Just watching it on the draft cast, right? This guy can go out and make the play for you. You have the quarterback that can make the throw, and now you have the receiver that can make the tough catch. And obviously there's a lot of blanks to fill in from point A to point B, but you have the big pieces. And from there, you can set everything up, but if you don't have your guy eventually, who they hope is going to be Carnell Tate, then you'll never have it. So this is that point where you go grab him.
He caught 85% of his contested catches. Over 50% of his catches were either for a first down or a touchdown. This man is an electric player, and I think he's going to be a part of an electric offense. It might not be this year. I think that's the biggest part is Cam Ward still needs a little bit of time to develop, but you give him that year with Carnell Tate, then they're heading into year 2 a lot more prepared and ready for competition. I'll say another thing, talk about being ready. This guy played under NFL coordinators, played for Chip Kelly. He played for Brian Hartline, who I think might be the greatest wide receivers coach ever. I mean, he coached some of the best wide receivers to come out of the best wide receiver university in Ohio State. I look at this as confirming that he is going to be a good player. Just look at the heritage. I mean, you look at Marvin Harrison Jr. He might not have had the best recent couple of years, but I think he's on his way back up. Garrett Wilson, offensive rookie of the year. It's just Ohio State has produced and produced and produced, and I think you're going to continue to see that same style of player with Carnell Tate. But we're going to go ahead and take a moment to catch our breaths before we head over to New York for pick number 5.
The 5th pick is in. We were trying to go to break there, but the 5th pick is indeed in, and it's Arvell Reese. So I guess we'll stick here and talk about Arvell Reese a little bit, Landon.
Yeah, absolutely. Really taking the best player available in edge rusher, not really the biggest need for the Giants, but Arvell Reese at 5. Really a surprise that he was here. There were talks of him going even up to 2. I definitely can't be mad at just taking the best player available in Arvell Reese.
And guys, before we get deeper into this talk, we do have a trade to announce. Pick number 6, which was initially Cleveland, has been traded to Kansas City. Pick number 9. So the official trade, the Browns, they trade pick number 6. The Chiefs, they acquire pick 6. Sorry, that has it backwards here, but the Browns traded pick 6 for picks 9, 74, and 148. So the Chiefs are up to number 6. Makes you wonder.
Are they going for Caleb Downs?
What Kansas City is eyeing here at 6.
I think Caleb Downs might be the next hot option here. You look at what Kansas City might be needing. I was honestly thinking that they might go wide receiver depending on what was left on the board, just because you can never have too many options. And we've seen Kansas City prove that year after year after year, drafting wide receivers. But I kind of like this move up for them. But let's go back to Arvell Reese, because I have one more question for you, Charles, over here. I feel like he has really struggled in defending, dropping back in coverage, especially against tight ends. You look at that streak up the middle of the field. It's been a bit of an issue for him. How does he fix that, or does he fix that? Is that going to be an issue for his entire career?
I mean, this is a team that I think I play this game every single year with the Giants, so I'm just like, why? I love Arvell Reese. He is the best player available, and this is the move to make if you're watching baseball, if you're playing baseball. This is a team that needs a fit, and this is a team that already has Abdul Carter, already has Brian Burns, already has another edge rusher, and it's a team that it's starting to get a little bit convoluted as there's so many edge rushers on this team that where does Arvell Reese fit? Because they already had to make room for Abdul Carter, and now you have to make room for Arvell Reese. Yes, he's the best player available, but in this situation with Arvell Reese, who is a potential number 2 overall pick, this is where I move back. I'm making a move back because I think that personally it could have really helped this team. But we're going to take a short break as we're going to see what the Kansas City Chiefs are going to make. We'll be right back.
Trades were bound to happen, and I had a feeling it was going to be the Cleveland Browns, and that's exactly what they did with that number 6 pick. That means, surprisingly, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be up. So some questions to be answered here with where this pick is going. Why might a team trade up for this 6th pick? What is so appealing that they would want to give up so much? Because that was a big package, Charles.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, secondary, I think, is what we're going to look at here between Delane and Downs. These are two players that are going to make an instant impact in the secondary for a Chiefs team that did just give up Trent McDuffie, and now you got to kind of replace that. So, I mean, the reason that they're having another first-round pick is because they gave up some of their secondary. You got to continue to get that secondary help. For a Chiefs team that had a historically bad year for a team that was just a dynasty a few years ago, I mean, they're starting to kind of in a weird rebuild state, and I think that now they're making that move, that aggressive move, and looking at what they gave up, I mean, yes, it was a big package, but I don't think it was nearly as bad to jump up 3 picks over 2 teams that are also secondary heavy and are looking to get secondary. I mean, I think that one of these next 2 picks goes down to Delane, and I think that that's why they try to jump them, leapfrog them, so they don't need to worry about that for the next picks. Jace raising his hand over there, that means the pick is in. Who do the Kansas City Chiefs take?
So the Chiefs move up. You think it's going to be Caleb Downs? No, it's Mansour Delane from LSU heading to Kansas City. They needed secondary help either way. A safety at corner was kind of their biggest needs heading into the draft. Heaven, how do we feel about Mansour Delane heading to Kansas City at number 6?
As you said, I really expected it to be Caleb Downs, and when this pick came in, I'm kind of shocked. He's great in the press zone coverage, I would say, which Kansas City needs. They need that extra coverage. He has tight technique and great change of direction. He really sets the tone for the defense, so maybe come in and set the tone for this Chiefs team.
And for the Chiefs, obviously they traded McDuffie in the offseason. They lost numerous corners as well. So guys, the Chiefs, they lose some corners, but they get one back in the draft. They have to trade up, trading a 3rd and a 5th along with their 9th pick for this, but maybe a package the Chiefs aren't too mad about.
I mean, taking a look at it, I mean, Mansour Delane is one of those guys, for me personally, that you mentioned earlier that there's no cornerback that really stands out more than the others for you. I'll tell you who does. Mansour Delane has always been that guy for me, and that could help that I'm an LSU fan. But, I mean, I got to watch him play a lot more than I got to watch some of these other guys. And this guy is really good when it comes to playing in short yardage. And that's what we're seeing a little bit more. We're seeing a lot less of teams throwing the ball 40, 50 yards and a little bit more of them chipping their way up the field. It's at least the good teams. And his only real struggle is going against those 40, 50-yard guys. And I think that that's going to be what's so good for him. His measurables are good. He does a good job at not only stopping the ball on short, but he can play aggressive, he can play press, he can also play loose in his zone. He can do it all, and I think that that's so important for this Chiefs team that you're losing McDuffie, who was one of the best slot corners in the league. I loved McDuffie, and now you bring in a guy that has that same potential. I think that this was a good move and a very valid reason to leapfrog 2 other teams to get a guy like this.
And I would say in a weird way, this kind of helps out the run game. Something the Chiefs have struggled with for years and years now has been the run defense. I think ever since that first Super Bowl that they won, it has been the #1 struggle. They just haven't been able to stop the run. You look at the Eagles in the championship 2 years ago, they won because they could run the ball, and the Chiefs just couldn't stop them. So I say that this helps them because it takes a little bit of pressure off of them when they don't have to worry about that deep ball. They can just get upfield and they can pressure the quarterback. I think this is a good fit for the Kansas City Chiefs, but I don't know if it was worth trading up that much. That's my biggest question is, why would you trade up? I felt like they would have had him easy at number 9. I don't know who would have taken him. You say something
what they were talking about is that Washington, once they saw a guy go off the board, they had Delane probably number 1 or 2 on their board, and the Chiefs knew about this. So the Chiefs, they had to hop Washington to get the guy they wanted. And the Commanders now here sitting at 7. Their pick is indeed in. We're waiting on the official word, but they wanted Delane. The Chiefs hopped him.
I would say I think another thing that Washington should honestly have looked at was Carnell Tate. I would have been a little bit upset that the Titans took that from me so early just because it fits into the offense so well. And I just don't know that they necessarily needed all that much more defense. I guess you can't have too much defense, but I feel like that offense, Jane Daniels, could use a little bit more weapons. I just feel like they can't add enough weapons.
And I'll say that's what that was. You mentioned that there was a player that went off. Carnell Tate was who they definitely wanted there, and they lost that. And that's where they have to take the opportunity to take what is given to them. And Mansour Delane, like you mentioned, this is a team that the Commanders, they brought in Marshawn Lattimore to be their guy, their cornerback 1, and he did not work out. It just didn't work for them last year. And maybe Lattimore will be good next year, but last year he's aging. He was a quarterback 1 in New Orleans, was not amazing in Washington. And I think that this is their way of fixing that problem, bringing in a guy that, Lattimore didn't work out, but Delane could. And now you have another cornerback for a team that they traded away a lot of their solid cornerbacks. They traded away one of their guys to the Rams that ended up having a really good season. Lattimore didn't play well. Now you have a cornerback, help the secondary out, and maybe get a receiver later on because it's not the spot to take a receiver with your number 1 guy out.
I'll say the numbers here scare me a little bit. You don't see the production that at least I would like to see out of him, but I think those long arms, the deflections, make up for a lot of the tackles and other things. There's a lot of intangibles that come with this guy. But, Jace, I'm going to go ahead and throw it back over to you. I believe the word is in.
The word is in, and they get maybe the most explosive guy in the draft. Sonny Styles is heading to Washington. So they wanted Carnell Tate, didn't get him. They wanted Mansour Delane. The Chiefs hopped him, so they go down to the third option on the list, and they go Sonny Styles as the linebacker / edge rusher, whatever you want to call him, heads to Washington. But this guy, Landon, is very explosive.
Yeah, you mentioned the explosiveness. He's so tall, so fast, so strong, 6'5", 244, and in those explosion drills, 99th percentile. So obviously very elite, very versatile. I mentioned before the draft that he can do so many different things for you. Plays linebacker, but has some experience playing safety. He can drop back into zone. He's pretty comfortable there. We mentioned that's somewhat of a need for Washington. So, like I said, very versatile defender. You can put him in a lot of different defensive schemes. I like this pick a lot for the Commanders.
But where do you see some of his weaknesses being? We talk about him being explosive, but where does he struggle on the field?
Yeah, some of those intangibles, those play actions and fakes, he can bite at times. So it has to kind of build that discipline, build that technique. But the frame, athleticism, absolutely there. He has the tools to do it. He just has to do it at a pro level.
You know, Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, and Jackson Dart are all doing a few more sprints this offseason because of this pick right here. I really think that he has probably the highest upside, the highest ceiling in this linebacker class, because we talk about guys that can really do everything. This is a guy that can truly, actually do everything at least a decent level and at an NFL caliber. I think it's really the measurables here. The size, the speed, the athleticism. You can throw him into any program, and more specifically this program, and he's going to get the job done for you. I think he's going to put up crazy numbers earlier than people think.
I think you could honestly, I might sound crazy for saying this, but I'm going to give him the Myles Garrett comparison. I just think this guy could be that level of a game changer. You put him on that line and he's getting to the quarterback. You ask him to do something, he will do it. This is a great addition for Washington. I feel like what they were missing was maybe one piece defensively. I know I just said that they didn't really need defense, but this might be the thing to push them over the hump, get them past that first round, help Jaden Daniels finally get to where I think he should be.
The organization was in a really weird spot with this pick because, you know, your number one option got taken off the board and you're looking for somewhere to go. And it gives you a chance to gamble. I think that's what you're doing here in picking Styles. I think you're gambling on this pick. But at this point, Washington's really on the upside. I think that they're heading in the right direction, barring their quarterback stays healthy and Jaden Daniels. I think he can really push this team where it needs to go. I think they're heading in the right direction. I think you had some breathing room to reach, if you want to call it that.
You want to talk about gambling, picking this up. This is like doubling down on an 11 right here. A great pickup for Washington. Next up is New Orleans, and some questions here. Where do they go? I feel like they're another team that just has so many options. They can do so much with this pick. Charles, what's the option? What's your choice if you're in that room?
Yes, everything. They need everything. I think it's one of those situations where they can take best available because there's so many problems going on in New Orleans right now. I mean, your receiver has been on the IR more than he's played. I mean, your defense has not been amazing. The D-line has not looked amazing. The quarterback play hasn't been amazing, but hey, they can work with it for now. There's so many problems that need fixing, and I think that, like you said, you take best available, and you know who my best available is in this situation? Caleb Downs. I'm going Caleb Downs here if I am the Saints because he is the most talented player. There are some times, and there are some people that make arguments, and I'll agree with them in some ways, that say that Caleb Downs is the #1 prospect in this draft. You know, positions aside, needs aside, he is the #1 prospect. And I think that that's one of those things, like, if I'm the Saints, that's where I'm going because of the fact that there's so many problems on this team and you can kind of run Downs as that leader to help the defense, similar to what they wanted with Tyrann Mathieu and what he can do for the Saints, I think could help them get back to the Saints that we knew and loved.
Jace, let me come to you with this. There's another guy on there, a dude out of Miami, Ruben Bain Jr., off the edge, and I felt like he was a game changer. You might remember him from that game against Notre Dame, Jace. I think you remember that interception out on the outside there, his only interception. Maybe not a favorable play for Jace, but it is very favorable for Miami fans and anybody who gets the chance to pick him up. How do you feel about that pickup, and would it be a good choice here, or is that too early? Is it reaching?
I mean, it might be reaching. I'm not too sure as what the Saints are going to do here. Obviously, Charles, you were mentioning Caleb Downs possibly going here. I feel like safety isn't their biggest need. They have a lot more that could go ahead of here at safety. So, I mean, you still have plenty of edge rushers. You still have receivers. You still have plenty of options on the board here. I mean, Downs, yes, might be the best athlete available right now, but there's still other things that the Saints should attack first.
You mentioned receivers. The next guy up is Mekhi Lemon. You got Mekhi Lemon and Jordan Tyson. I think those are two guys, maybe one a little bit more for sure in Mekhi Lemon. I feel like he's proved himself over at USC. How does he fit here in this system with a new quarterback and really just, I would say honestly, a completely new team? This team has been struggling since Drew Brees left.
And we take a look at Mekhi Lemon. He, on paper, is one of my favorite receivers. I mean, he could do it all. And I'm not a Jordan Tyson guy, and I'll be one of the first ones to say it. Not a big fan of Jordan Tyson, but I like you said, the idea of them bringing a receiver. Like I said, I mean, it really is one of those things of, similar to what Caden said earlier, you close your eyes, throw a dart, because they need everything. And there's so many options for them here that, like you said, Caleb Downs isn't necessarily maybe a need, but he's best player available. Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon, they're also kind of in the needs things, but do you want to pick them at 9? I mean, do you want to pick them here? Do you believe that that's the pick that they're supposed to be at? There's a lot of questions going on in New Orleans right now, and I'm really intrigued to see what route they take, because there are some safe options, but there are some options that could be a little bit of reach.
Like that word you use, route, because this guy is a route artist, a great route runner, and there was another guy in New Orleans who was a pretty good route runner, maybe by the name of Michael Thomas. So as we look over to the future, Jace, what's the word?
It is not Mekhi Lemon. It is Jordan Tyson who is heading to New Orleans. Surprise, surprise, Jackson. This is great timing for you. You're a pass catcher guy. You're also a Saints fan, so you're up here doing some dual action here with a receiver and your Saints. I know that you are not very happy right now with this pick for your Saints.
This is going to be the most biased analysis you've ever heard. This is the dumbest pick ever. You mentioned Caleb Downs, you mentioned Reuben Bain, you mentioned Mekhi Lemon, all three of them better. I think you could pick anybody else except Jordan Tyson. He's not anything special. He will either run the best route of your life, or he just won't run a route, and he'll just stand there because he's lazy. He's scared to take a hit. He's like Tyler Lockett, but goes down, but worse than Tyler Lockett.
And Jackson, on your comparisons, you compared him to Adonai Mitchell.
He makes the big play when needed. Well, not even when needed, when not needed. But when needed, he's one of the worst players on a football field.
Well, you heard Jackson's analysis there. Maybe biased, maybe not. I think it was more biased than not. Guys, Jordan Tyson, maybe a bit of a surprise that he went this high. You already saw a receiver go off the board with Carnell Tate, so maybe teams are getting more antsy at the receiver department right now.
We're coming to you first, Charles, over here. I had him written down as the most underrated player possibly going in the first round because of guys like Charles, because of guys like Jackson hating on him. I think it was unwarranted. I think he's an absolutely good player that just needs a little bit of development. And that was why I mentioned maybe him going to the Chiefs. I felt like the Chiefs have very good development, and I think the Saints, they're going to have to get on their horse, maybe upgrade the facilities, put a couple of VC into, or some Madden coins into the facilities, get everything upgraded for this guy because he needs just a little bit more to be what they need. And I think he can be. I would have honestly taken Lemon over him, Charles. Not a big Jordan Tyson guy. Might I ask why? Why specifically?
Do I hate Jordan Tyson? Absolutely not. Is he a top 15 player? Absolutely. I'll give it to him. Do I think he is overrated? Also, yes. I think that I would take Mekhi Lemon over him. I like the intangibles of Mekhi Lemon. I think that Jordan Tyson is one of those players that benefits from his highlight reel ability. A lot of people see what he can do. They see the amazing catches that he makes, and they're like, oh my goodness, I want that on my team. And that doesn't always translate to productivity. I mean, the production, to me, is what is big in this situation. His production is not as much as I would like to see it from a guy like Mekhi Lemon, who I'm very high on, from a guy like Carnell Tate, who I'm also very high on. So I think that, like you mentioned, Jackson put down in his analysis, he's like a slower Garrett Wilson, which Garrett Wilson, half of his skill is the fact that he can move and run routes so well. But A.D. Mitchell is not exactly a comparison I would want. The route running, to me, is the biggest problem. Tyler Shaw is not going to be one of those guys that's going to throw it 60 yards into the end zone, and Jordan Tyson's going to get it for you. It's not like he's playing with Mahomes. He's playing with a sophomore quarterback that is such a question mark in the league that I think that he needed a consistent route runner, and to bring in a highlight guy with a mediocre quarterback, to me, just isn't my favorite fit.
You know, in defense of this pick, I will say that I don't know if you're drafting a 3-4 down receiver, but you're drafting a guy you can throw it to on third down. You have a safety valve, 6'2", 203. His route tree isn't exactly the most expansive, and I wouldn't necessarily compare him to an Alec Pierce, but He's got that similar, let's run straight, let's go catch that high ball and go make a play. I don't think you're drafting him for complete games, but I think you're drafting him to make the one play that matters come that big competition.
And that makes you question, is it worth the number 9 pick? I don't see him being not only not the best player available, but just I don't think he is the best player for them to take. I had him as underrated, but I didn't have him as the 9th pick. I will say that for sure. But it does give them some more weapons to deal with and more weapons to progress the future. I think that's the biggest thing for them is it's not going to be year one. We've said it 3 or 4 times now, but this is a team that is maybe the farthest away from having a successful season. I mean, they are missing a lot of pieces down there in New Orleans, but it's a good start. Jordan Tyson's going to keep them going, and it's going to give them someone to throw the ball to. But the Browns are back up on the board, ready to go, Charles. Now they have that 9th pick. It may be a change in heart, maybe a change in pick. Where do they go here?
I don't know. That is truly the honest answer. I don't know where to go here. I mean, this is a team that, once again, needs a lot, but doesn't one really sticks out to me. I could see them potentially going O-line to maybe protect Shedeur if they wanted to do that. I don't see them going defense here. I think that their defense is fine for right now and isn't one of their biggest needs. I see them going potentially O-line or potentially receiver. But they had a lot of surprises in the receiver room last year that I think will keep them from needing to go receiver in the first round. So I think keeping Sanders up as if you wanted to be a QB1, which I believe he should be QB1 in Cleveland, if you want to keep him as your QB1, you need to protect him. And that's why I'm going with the first offensive lineman off the board. And I think that this will be the reason that they keep, like we said, keep the QB1 up off the floor, keep him from having to make those quick time decisions.
That man would be the 6'6" offensive tackle out of Miami, Florida, Francis Maui-Noah. And Jace, you and I talked a little bit about him before we got started. Not only a very fun name, one that I like a lot, but someone who could instantly fit into an offensive line very, very well, Jace. I think this is an immediate change if the Browns pick him up, and I think it is a very good pickup.
Well, I mean, the Browns, they need tackles. They need O-line. Obviously, they have 4 quarterbacks that they protect, so someone's got to do it. And I think Maui-Noah is probably your favorite to go here because of, I mean, he is the top offensive tackle in this year's draft. Maui-Noah has been phenomenal at Miami. There's other guys they could go to, but you would think Maui-Noah would be that main guy because of what he's done at Miami and the comparisons he's gotten to Tristan Wirfs over there in Tampa.
I feel like this would be a safe pick for them. I think that's maybe the best word to go with. Maybe in the same way that the Raiders needed to go with Mendoza. I think you take the offensive lineman here just to be safe. But there is one name that is still up on that board that is getting scary low right now, and that's Caleb Downs.
I mean, yeah, we're looking at Caleb Downs, one of my favorite players in this draft. And this is, like I said, not a need for the Browns, but, I mean, you also don't want to let him fall, too. I mean, sometimes you just got to sit there and be like, well, might as well. And I feel like that's what the Giants did with Arvell Reese, where he just kind of fell to him, and they're like, why not? And I think that that's one of the things that we could see with the Browns, because Caleb Downs is that good. But at the same time, like we said, there is someone on the board. You can't go wrong with taking the number 1 tackle in the draft. You can't go wrong with that. And I think that that is one of those things that, like we said, the team needs. But Caleb Downs, like I said, best player here, and we're slowly starting to dip into weird territory with the Giants having an opportunity to bring in Caleb Downs, but they don't need him, so they're probably not going to bring him in. So, I mean, where does he go?
And if you're the Giants, you were sitting there thinking, I might get him with that pick number 5, and now he's falling right into your lap. I think it might be a good option for them. But let me go to you, Nate. You're a Browns fan. You've probably watched more Browns football than 95% of the world, which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. But I know you enjoy the defensive side of things with Myles Garrett over there. What's the addition you want to see to this team?
Well, before we go any further, you are a Bengals fan, Jake. When's the last time you've been in the playoffs? It's been a while.
Like 2 years ago, I think.
3 years ago.
When
Been
they were
3
in the
straight,
Super Bowl?
right?
They were in the Super Bowl not too long ago.
They were in the Super Bowl not too long ago, so I mean, you can't really talk
you
that
have
much.
Joe Burrow, though. I mean, so you should be there a little more often. That's okay. Getting back to the Browns himself, defensively, you have Myles Garrett. You know, you have Schweissinger, the defensive rookie of the year. Defensively, you're looking good. Denzel Ward. I mean, you got so many pieces defensively. Obviously, Caleb Downs would be nice. But the biggest thing is we lost almost everybody on the offensive line. There's a couple, Titus Howard and a couple other guys who came in, Robinson as well, to kind of fulfill, kind of help that offensive line. But that's the question mark is the offense. Quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line. Pretty much everything. is something that we could use as a Browns fan and as a guy who has watched quite a bit of Browns games.
And Nate, while you're up here, well, the pick is indeed in for the Cleveland Browns. We thought it might be Francis Mauigoa. We'll have to wait 1 second longer. It is going to be Spencer Fano, who is heading to the Cleveland Browns. I know you're a big fan of the 2 Utah guys in this draft. Fano is one of those 2. Fano is, I think, your favorite of the 2. He's heading to your team.
So Fano is my favorite offensive lineman in this draft. So I am extremely happy when you look at this pick. When you look at Fano as a person, as a player, he's allowed just 3 sacks in 3 years starting. Started every game for Utah. So no injury problems, not an issue with him. You have a guy who's a freshman All-American. He's an All-Pro, first-team All-Pro this past year. He's first team, all the time for the Big 12, right? This is a guy who's done it, and he's done it extremely well. And also, not only is he just good at his position, but he can move around. He is agile enough to play inside, to play left, to play right tackle. He's a guy who can really do it all and really sit in a place where he's so valuable for your team. That's his biggest strength, is being able to get onto drive blocks, run block, right? And being able to get on double teams, to get off, get up to linebackers. He's so good at that. And then, he has the agile, the quickness to still do well in pass pro as well. A little bit undersized, which is why they think he's going to kind of move to guard, but still a great pickup for the Browns.
And allowing 0 sacks last season, huge as part of that Utah offensive line. Guys, the Browns get their new offensive tackle, Spencer Fano. I think this is a pretty solid pick.
Well, if they ever figure out their quarterback situation, I don't know if they're sticking with – I don't know who they're going with at this point. They might as well do what Caden said, just blindfold at the dartboard, pick a quarterback. But as we look at this pickup, I think it instantly improves the defense. Not that it wasn't already great, but I think offense, excuse me. Not that it wasn't already all right, because I think last year you saw such a big step up for the Browns. They were awful 2 years ago. They bring in Shedeur Sanders. They bring in Dylan Gabriel. They weren't game changers, but they went out there and they did what they needed to do. You give them a little bit more protection. Next thing they needed, they just got some more picks with that trade. Got to get some weapons. I'm thinking a receiver, maybe even get another offensive lineman later in this draft. There's a lot to work with here if you're the Browns. And if you're a Browns fan, Nate, over there, I'd be pretty happy with this. This is a good start to the draft for any Browns fan.
Well, Nate said you need quarterback, you need receiver, you need to spend everything, right? But it all starts with a good offensive line. You can have good players everywhere else, but if there's no offensive line, then they don't mean a thing. So I don't mind this pick at all. I think you got one of the best guys at this position in this class, and I think you're going to prove as a pretty well pick.
Let me come to you real quick, Charles, before we head to break. I think the strength is something that is immediately apparent with this guy, one of the strongest players, and uses it to his advantage, but maybe a little bit in the technique department needs some work with that. The small things are what defensive linemen are going to exploit. How quickly do you think he can make that jump and be NFL ready?
I do think it's going to be a year or two, and I think that's why they took him, because he's not the best player on the board, but intangible-wise and skill-wise, and he can be the best O-lineman. I think that's the biggest thing, because like we always mention whenever we talk about the draft, the Browns are not one tackle away from even making the playoffs. They're not. And you bring in a tackle that is a guy that is going to be good in a few years. It's similar to what the Jets did whenever they brought in Fashanu, whenever they brought in Membao, one of those guys that technique-wise, strength-wise, is very, very raw and has potential to be the best guy in the draft, but it's going to take a little bit. Some players are really fast, like we saw with Olu, while some people never find it. And I think that's going to be the interesting thing about Fano is how long does it take for him to find it? I give it a year or two if he does, but then if he doesn't after a year or two, that's whenever the questions are going to start arising. But the Giants are on the clock. We're going to take a quick break real quick just to get a little breather, get some drinks in us, and we're going to be right back here on UINDY TV.
Feels like we just got started, but we're already at pick number 10. Jace, tell us who it is.
Pick number 10, we're talking about him maybe at number 9 to the Browns. Instead, he goes at number 10 to the Giants. They already got Arvell Reese. They now get Francis Mauigoa. They get their offensive tackle. Maybe we could move him to offensive guard. They need more of a guard than the tackle. They do, but Mauigoa either way is heading to the New York Football Giants. They get maybe the best available tackle at this point.
I would say he's definitely the best available, and I loved what you said about moving him to guard, because one of the weaknesses of Francis Mauigoa is his speed in the feet. So, lateral quickness, getting to his spots on a very quick edge rusher. When you move him inside, everything's a lot, tight, compact, obviously, because you have the center, you have the tackle on either side, and he would be great. His comp, Tristan Wirfs, he's a big guy, though, 6'6", 330. He's going to be a guy who can play outside and be kind of a staple, but you'd be even better playing that guard position. 8 sacks over the last 3 years, just 2 this past year. He was great for the Miami team, who did go on that run to the national championship game. He was a big part of that, as just being good in the trenches. I really like this pick for the Giants, just because you're trying to protect Jackson Dart. You're trying to create a great team with John Harbaugh as the head of the helm. So, this pick solidifies the offensive line, and I think it'd be great for him.
Before we send things over to the guys over there, we do have a trade to announce. Pick 11 initially was the Miami Dolphins. Instead, the Cowboys, they move up a singular pick to number 11. The trade officially, in exchange for the 11th pick, the Cowboys are sending picks 12, 177, and 180 to the Miami Dolphins. So the Dolphins acquire 2 extra picks in the draft for going down 1 spot. The Cowboys, their pick is already in. We'll be waiting for the official announcement of that, but let's just say they got their guy. But guys, let's talk a little bit about Francis Mauigoa.
I think that, like we said, we're looking at a Giants team that is trying to protect their potential franchise guy, and this is an investment bringing him in, because not only do you bring in one of the best linebackers in the draft, but now you bring in arguably the best tackle in the draft, and I think that that's really important for them. And now the Cowboys make on a move, and the Cowboys only jump up 1 pick, so a little bit of a surprise for us. That means that someone must have been chomping at the bit for Dolphins pick. Dolphins are probably not going to take whoever was on there, and I think if I'm them, I'm going Caleb Downs here, and I think at number 11, the Dolphins don't need Caleb Downs, and now this is a team that takes that opportunity, gets a few more picks, and the Cowboys avoid getting jumped.
I think there's also the possibility that the Dolphins were like, hey, Cowboys, we just got a call from so-and-so saying they're going to give us this because they want to get your guy, and they were like, that's not going to happen. Let's work something out to where we can just do a little trade here, get my guy, and I think both teams are going to win. That is if they pick up Caleb Downs. I don't know where else you go right now if you're the Cowboys. You need the defense, and he's not only the best available, but potentially a generational talent. You don't say that about NFL players all that often. This guy could be it.
Because at this point, you're getting into that range of the first round where it's almost disrespectful not to take him. He's too talented. He's shown it. He's been there. He's done that on the best team in the nation for however many years in college football. So to see him drop into the double digits is almost surprising, and I think that it is the move to make, to trade up to go get this guy while he's there now.
Charles, your opinion on this trade? I think maybe a questionable move, just hopping up 1, but what value does this provide for a Dallas team who struggled a little bit more defensively than they might have thought?
When I looked at the Cowboys and did my mock draft, I said that they're going to take 2 people, Mansour Delane or Caleb Downs. Delane is gone. He's gone really early compared to what we thought he would be this draft. And Caleb Downs now is, like you said, I think it is exactly the way that you said it. The Dolphins were getting calls to pick up their pick, and the Cowboys feared they'd lose it, so they had to take the jump. Because we've already seen a team get jumped in this draft so far, and a team not get their guy. And so now, the Cowboys, they're not going to want that to happen to them. They're going to make that risk and go get their guy, because Caleb Downs, like you said, is potentially generational, and could not think of a better team to be a generational talent on than what some people say is America's football team, and whether you agree or not, the Dallas Cowboys. That is a great pickup if they do bring in Downs. And I think it's clear as day, because I cannot imagine jumping up in this draft for anyone else that's left.
And I think it fits Caleb Downs very well, because he's a versatile player that I think could fit in just about any system with really any team. I don't think that there's a team right now that could sit there and say, yeah, we're good. We're going to pass on Caleb Downs. I know a couple of them have, but you're talking about them needing just a little bit more out of that pick. And right here, I think you're sitting at a perfect spot where, like you said, it's almost disrespectful for them not to take him. I feel like the only other option, literally the only other option, is Reuben Bain Jr. But Jace, I'll throw it back over to you, sir.
Well, you guys are all right. It is Caleb Downs who is going to be a Dallas Cowboy. They needed a safety badly, probably their second biggest need in this draft. The Dolphins didn't need one as badly, but they still could maybe take him. So the Cowboys thought, why not hop one spot, make sure we get our guy, and they go get Caleb Downs. Having this probably the best safety in the draft here, probably a top 5 overall talent, but he falls to number 11. The Cowboys, though, get Caleb Downs.
Yeah, I would say Caleb Downs is such a premium player in an almost non-as-premium position. He plays extremely fast, and he covers so much range, and he's just in the right place when the play happens. He's in the right place. He's one of those players that, again, is one of those top talents, and I think in this whole draft. I'm surprised he went a little bit later, but he is, I think, a great fit for the Cowboys.
But where do you see his weaknesses being right now, Caleb Downs?
Right now, I would say he's more of a rangy playmaker than more of a intimidating enforcer on the line. I would say when he faces those bigger receivers, I would say the quicker ones, the ones that get the range, I think he's there. But when it comes to those intimidating wide receivers, bigger or maybe a little bit stronger than him, I see him getting beat against some of these NFL vets.
Guys, another Buckeye off the board, and Downs finally does go at number 11. Pretty interesting spot here with Dallas.
Surprised he fell this far, but I think the one thing that you can say is that Dallas, they're getting a dog in Caleb Downs. This is a very good pick. Some might even call it a steal. I honestly am going to call it a steal because I feel like he is the best player in this draft. Just skill for skill, he has always been the best player. You think about when he went to Alabama, then when he moved to Ohio State, he's been in the headlines. He led them to a national championship. He was their vocal leader. This guy is exactly what they need. And I feel like it's a perfect time to pick him up, but I feel like you did have to give up a little bit, so maybe you're not as happy. I think if they would have got him at 12, that's perfect, but this is the second best option.
If anybody pays you back with their pick, it's going to be Caleb Downs. Just his pure experience on the football field. I think he's got some of the best fundamentals that we're going to see on the defensive side of the football coming out of this class. And he's a natural-born leader. Natural-born leader coming out of Ohio State. At this point, it's almost scary to have, a 22-year-old as the back line of your defense seeing everything. But that's exactly what this guy does. He sees everything, and he has a closing speed to make it happen anywhere on the field, whether it's a run that break loose, whether it's a misassignment in coverage. He can pick up your man down the field. He's going to be there.
Charles, I talked to you earlier about him getting downhill, his ability to make the play at the line of scrimmage. What does that provide for this Dallas team? How does it help them get to that next level and maybe getting back to the playoffs, maybe winning a playoff game? I don't think they've done that in my lifetime.
This is a Dallas team that has struggled defensively in so many areas of the field, and you bring in a guy that is, like we've mentioned, and we use this word a lot, but I truly do believe this is the right way to do it. A plug and play, a chess piece, whatever you want to say, because he can do it all. He can play all 3 levels. He can go in the backfield. Reminds me a little bit of Kyle Hamilton a little bit on that ability to play in the backfield while also being a solid safety, and I think that's why I like him so much, is because the Cowboys need help everywhere. There is no position that's sitting there like, oh yeah, no, we're fine. They need help in the middle. They need help a little bit in the secondary. They need help pass rushing. They need help run blitzing. And you bring in a guy that can do it all, that can, like you said, be a verbal leader for a Cowboys team that has quite simply just not lived up to the hype. Caleb Downs is used to playing in the bright lights. He's played for some of the biggest programs in football history. He's now going to one of the biggest teams in football history. I cannot think of a better fit. And this is one of my favorite pickups of the draft because, like you said, not only is he one of the best players in the draft, it's a great fit for him. And this is the biggest win-now move the Cowboys could have made because, yes, some people are going to complain that they traded 2 fifth-round picks for him. Whoop-de-doo. You guarantee the fact that you get arguably a top 5 talent in the draft, what I would argue a top 3 talent in this draft.
You compare him to Kyle Hamilton. How about Budda Baker? I see when he tackles, I see Budda Baker immediately. I think back to the play where he intercepted it, got chased down by DK Metcalf. Maybe not a bright spot in his career, but I just think about the speed and the power. And getting that comparison, that makes me a lot more confident if I'm the Dallas Cowboys that, yes, I did not reach. There was probably a reason that we're going to find out in the next day or two why he did not go in the top 5. There's got to be something because he is just too talented, in my opinion, to go outside the top 10. I feel like the Dallas Cowboys really got a steal, and Jerry Jones is going to be happy with this one. Very, very happy.
Well, the problem with Dallas in the last however many years is that they go out and they make some big moves. Right? They'll make Dak the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. They'll go out and they'll spend some money. I feel like they've been missing it in the draft recently, and this is where they've allowed themselves to get back. It's probably about as safe as you can go pick-wise, but you're getting the most NFL-ready guy through these first 12 picks.
Yeah, I think that's probably another good thing to say is that anybody from Ohio State, they're just NFL ready. It seems like maybe it's because they're playing for NFL coordinators, this, that, and the other, but they just always seem a little bit more prepared than the others. I looked at Garrett Wilson as the premier example, going to the Jets, a team that people thought were going to be the worst team in the NFL and probably were for a little bit. Sorry, Charles. But he put them at a different level and allowed them to compete in some of those games just by running good routes. It got other people open. And on this, obviously, you're going to the offensive side of things. But I think Caleb Downs, good spot for him right here. A steal.
Absolutely. We take a look now at the Dolphins. Where are the Dolphins going to go here? There's a lot of needs. We know that the pick is currently in, but we do not know officially who it is. But what are the needs for the Dolphins now? They're quarterback needy. They're everything needy, really. I mean, the Dolphins are in a horrible situation. But Jace is giving me the thumbs up, so that means that we have a pick in.
Another offensive lineman off the board here. Caden Proctor is heading to Miami Dolphins. It may be a reach, some might say. A big dude, Caden Proctor. I know you're a big fan of him from our pre-show or our draft pre-show that we had in the last weeks or so. But Caden Proctor heading to Miami at number 12. So they go back down a spot. They gain some future picks here in the latter rounds of the draft this year. And Caden Proctor is the guy they select.
You look at Caden Proctor as a prospect. He has all of the measurables. I mean, 6'7", listed around 350, 360. I mean, he is, a huge guy. He is a guy who is going to go out there and he's going to maul people. He's going to just out-physical you. The only problem with him, a little bit of the weight. That's been kind of an issue the last couple of games at the beginning of the season and, just staying healthy. But, man, if he hits his ceiling, be one of the best offensive tackles of all time. I mean, he is that type of talent, that type of guy who can go out there and do great things and be, one of those best guys. So he has a massive frame, like we said. He can move people. The list just keeps going of how physically talented he is. Again,
that weight,
it's the size, it's the injuries that could be a hindrance to his career.
I think that this is a good move, a really good move from that Dolphins front office. It's easy to go out and find the flashiest wide receiver left on the board and appease the fans, right? But this is a pick that solidifies your foundation. You find your guy in Caden Proctor, and like Nate said, a freak of nature. You're kidding. 6'7" on the line? That's a pretty big dude, and you can never, ever go wrong with picking the measurables.
I think that my biggest question here is if you were going to trade back with the Cowboys right there, why not try and maybe they did try and go back just a little bit more, but I mean, felt like that was maybe a 15 or 16 pick. I feel like they could have gotten even more out of this draft, maybe more draft capital. But I think the biggest thing to think about when you're thinking about the Dolphins is the situation that they now find themselves in. With the quarterback room, they're now losing Tua. They owe him God knows how much money. Same thing with Tyreek Hill. They're just paying out of their pockets, and this is where they need to do all their work, is in the draft. This is how you get cheaper players. This is how you improve a little bit. And I don't know that I'm not going to say this is a bad pick, but I don't know that this was the most valuable pick on the board. I was of the opposite opinion. I think that Mekhi Lemon is the one that they could have went with, maybe bolstered up the offense just a little bit more, because when I look at that, I felt like they didn't have enough weapons. I felt like their weapons weren't weaponized, I guess might be the best way to put it. And they got a lot to figure out with that organization. Maybe this was the safe pick in their eyes.
You might as well see the Miami organization right now as in a complete ceasefire. There's not a whole lot of weapons going on in there at all. So if you go out and pick a guy like Mekhi Lemon at this point, you're just not giving him any room to run. Malik Willis is going to be fine, I think. He'll probably have, that 63% completion percentage, maybe. He'll throw for 210 yards a game, maybe. And you just set up a wide receiver in that spot and without any room to grow. It would be a very uphill climb for him if you were to get drafted at that spot.
And one of the biggest things that we talk about the NFL is the NFL is a business, and your quarterback is your biggest investment. You just, like you said, you lost a lot of money on the Tua move. You bring in Malik Willis and spend a decent amount of money on him. You got to keep him alive because, quite frankly, the only weapon that the Dolphins did have was Tua being a heat-seeking missile directly into a linebacker. And the problem was now they have Malik Willis. You got to keep him on the field because Skylar White is not – wrong name, but – That's not going to work.
Thompson.
Skylar Thompson, thank you. Skylar Thompson is not going to work, and I think that was the biggest problem. I was thinking of Skylar Thompson and Mike White.
I was like, are we talking Breaking Bad right now?
That's exactly what I thought. Exactly what I thought too.
Skylar Thompson and Mike White are not going to work as quarterbacks for the future. You bring in a guy that can help protect Malik Willis. You now have the opportunity to bring in more talent with some of the draft picks that you bring in because, like you said, Caden Proctor has potential to be a premium tackle. And yes, I would have waited a little bit longer, but once again, same thing as Fano. The Dolphins are not a tackle away from making the playoffs, so might as well start building now.
That is true. I will say that I think we have officially reached boom or bust territory with this guy. I think he's going to have to prove himself, and if he doesn't, then we're going to be looking back at this pick as well. Threw that away. A bad start to the restart, as you will. But Jace, our NFL insider, will go back over to you for a second because I do have one question about the Rams. It felt like they had all the pieces they needed this year, but just came up a little bit short. What do they need to add?
I feel like a receiver could be a big need for them in this draft right now. You look at the receiver room, obviously they have Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, but they're getting older. They're aging, especially Devontae Adams. They could use a receiver. Obviously, we've already seen two of the main guys go off the board, but Mekhi Lemon is still there. And I feel like Lemon could be a great pick for this team right now to try to fill that third slot at receiver for this Rams team. So I expect to go receiver, but I wouldn't surprise if they went elsewhere.
I could see him. So you're thinking Mekhi Lemon, maybe? Is that what we're thinking? Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a safe option. What does he add to a team that already has so many weapons? We just talked about a team with absolutely zero weapons. Now we're moving on to, basically the U.S. military.
I mean, he adds a third weapon because you already have two guys that can do it with Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, but you add a third receiver for Matthew Stafford, who is, at the back end of his career right now. Because Stafford, he maybe has 1 or even 2 years left to try to win this team a second Super Bowl under his helm. So you need a third receiver to try to add to this team's, ability to stretch the field more.
The Rams are playing a game of replace the old guy right now, and you have Devontae Adams, one of the old guys. You have Matthew Stafford, another old guy, and now we see which of the old guys do they replace. Do they reach up and go Simpson? Do they take Mekhi Lemon? I mean, there are a lot of options here, and quite frankly, I'm interested to see. Jace has it, so let's see what it is. Which old guy did they replace, Jace?
They replaced they're planning to replace the future old guy and the quarterback. Ty Simpson is heading to the Los Angeles Rams. No one expected this
Dan
one.
Orlovsky got
no
to
one
him.
expected this. In the first round, the Rams, you think they might try to help Stafford as he's heading toward retirement. Instead, they're like, get the heck out the door, old man. We're going to replace you next year with this guy. Ty Simpson is heading to the Los Angeles Rams. They think they have their quarterback of the future after Stafford retires. I'm not so sure this is the guy.
It reminds me of the Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love situation.
Exactly.
The exact situation. You look at Ty Simpson as a quarterback. Obviously, Dan Orlovsky, he loves this guy. The tangibles, right? He's elusive in the pocket, able to move around, slide, able to hit guys in the motion. He recognizes the coverage, quickly. However, there are some weaknesses. He gets a little jittery in the pocket. He doesn't have the great arm talent. He's 6'1". His comps are Mac Jones and Brock Purdy. So he's not a guy who's going to wow you by any means. But when he gets some starts under his belt, maybe gets into a system, he could be really good. And with Sean McVay, I think this is the best place for him to go. Maybe not the pick that any of us thought would happen. But when you look at a system and the West Coast offense, the quick passes, this is maybe the best place he could go.
I think that the Rams might have used ChatGPT for this pick because Dan Orlovsky was going around campaigning that Ty Simpson was better than Fernando Mendoza. He was the best quarterback available. Well, little did anybody know, or now everybody knows, they work for the same, or they have the same agent, they're at the same marketing company, this, that, or whatever. It was all a sham. He's not actually better than Fernando Mendoza. If you watch the tape, you'll clearly see Fernando Mendoza in big games, making big plays at big moments. Ty Simpson, in my opinion, was the reason. He was the missing link. Quarterback has been the missing link for Alabama since Bryce Young left. I feel like Jalen Milroe struggled to get that team where it needed to be, and in the same way, Ty Simpson did too. They lost games because of him. He made bad throws. At the end of the day, he made bad throws that I think will continue to go into the NFL. I mean, it's hard to adjust and just magically be better. I mean, you've got to take the steps, and yes, he's going to be going into a system with the best coach, one of the best coaches in Sean McVay, and he's going to sit behind probably a top 5 quarterback right now in Matthew Stafford. So he's going to get better. He's going to have the time to get better, but 13? Ty Simpson at 13, they could have got him in the 3rd round probably.
Yeah, and we're talking about a guy who has 15 total collegiate starts under his belt. Was sitting the bench for his first 2 years in college. To take him with a 13th pick is questionable, even with a team in LA who had every chance in the book, every opportunity in the book to go any place they wanted to really reach for that Super Bowl again this year. It just seems kind of out of place. And it seems like a weird class to do this in. I feel like you could have waited till next year to make this pick.
We talked last year about that same kind of scenario because I thought last year that the quarterback class wasn't that good, and I was like, well, I'm looking into the future. It's going to be a great one. We got, Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier, Arch Manning, and then, well, they all kind of sucked this year. That left you with two guys, Fernando Mendoza, who was kind of a shock, a surprise on the scene, and then Ty Simpson, who I think people were expecting him to just be what he was, just a mid-level quarterback who got the job done for Alabama. I don't know that this is the 13th pick simply because of what Caden said. He has not played enough games to prove to me that I should pay him that much money. I should give him the money, put him in the position to maybe fail. I mean, I feel like this is a risky position that the Rams have not only put themselves in, but also put Ty Simpson in.
I mean, and here's the thing that we look at. The only real, speaker of this was Dan Orlevsky, which, mind you, I have as many wins as he did in one of his seasons in the NFL. So, I mean, I don't necessarily believe in Ty Simpson. I never have, and especially not this early, because I think the intangibles are there. I mean, it's solid, and he was actually on my Jets draft board for the second, maybe third round. So I have no idea why they went over, because I just feel like there's too much talent in this draft. I mean, they're not losing Matt Stafford. I mean, they might lose him next year, but even then, just take him in the next year's draft. You're not losing him this year. He's still playing. He's an MVP. So, I mean, I definitely think that this is a reach and a half. I mean, I am not liking this pick at all, personally. And it's not because I don't like Ty Simpson. I like Ty Simpson. I think that he has a very solid future, but he's just too early. It's way too early right now. You could have gotten him way later. I don't think there are a lot of NFL teams chomping at the bit for Ty Simpson right now.
And I think that might have been the big issue for the Rams. They might have got up and had their first two picks already taken off the board, and they didn't know where to go. And that happens sometimes. I feel like that is an acceptable thing, but for a team on the cusp of a championship, they were right there this year. I feel like this wasn't the play. I think they could have gotten another piece added to the defense a little bit. I mean, there's a lot. Ruben Bain Jr. is still there, and they could throw him on the edge and let him go crazy. You saw what happened the last time they had a decent defensive lineman. Oh, yeah, he was the best defensive lineman probably in the history. I mean, him and Myles Garrett, Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett, probably the two best. And I think the development, you can see those same skills transfer from Ruben Bain Jr. He played with an already good offensive or defensive line at Miami. I think he would walk into a good situation had he gotten picked up there. But he did not, and that moves us to our next pick. What are we at here? 13? Number 14, the Ravens are on the clock. What are we thinking?
I mean, for the love of all that is holy, y'all, the arm length is not that big of a deal for Ruben Bain to be dropping this low. There was a few months ago that he was number 2. I mean, the fact that Ruben Bain has fallen this far because of his arm length, to me, is absolutely absurd. I get it. I really, really do. We're all about intangibles around here, and I understand that. Okay, but sometimes you got to look at production. Sometimes you got to realize that he's had these arms his whole life, and he's still a top 5 prospect.
Well, Charles, we had the same conversation about Will Campbell last year. That's exactly what we did. We sat at the table and we said, Will Campbell, I don't know. I really like him. Really great guy. He did great in college. And then he went to the Super Bowl, and he was all over my Instagram for the exact wrong reasons. I think there's just too much evidence to say that arm length isn't a factor.
But mind you, he was a tackle on a Super Bowl team that had a really solid season until that Super Bowl. Yes, he had a bad game. Yes, it was on the biggest stage, but he did what he was supposed to do. One bad game is unfortunate, and I'm one of the first people to hop on the Will Campbell hate train because I hate the Patriots. But you cannot deny that Will Campbell was a solid player, and if not an above-average tackle, on most of the games that he played outside of the one game where they got absolutely mauled defensively. And mind you, that was an all-rookie side of the field against a defense that's one of the best defenses that we've seen in the last half-decade. So, I mean, yes, we're taking a look at short arms. Yes, we can mention that. But Will Campbell made a spot on a Super Bowl team. I have no reason why Ruben Bain cannot do the same. I pray that Ruben Bain drops just a little bit longer so that he can go to that good team, just like Will Johnson did whenever Will Johnson went to the Cardinals, and Will Johnson was one of the best cornerbacks from the draft class. No one talked about him because he played for the Cardinals, but people overlook some of these things. They see these little things that I feel like scouts, they try and earn their money a little bit too much. It's okay to just be like, yeah, this guy's pretty good, let's take him. I just don't understand it, and I'm ready for Ruben Bain to go, but Jace, You got the pick in for the Ravens. Who did they take?
Well, they did not take Ruben Bain. They go with Olivengna Ioane. Hopefully I pronounced that close or at least semi-correctly. But the Penn State guard is heading to the Baltimore Ravens. Phenomenal value here for him to go to the Ravens, and they get more protection from Lamar Jackson, more run protection for Derrick Henry, and an already great franchise who had some injury pitfalls last season. But they get their guy here at 14.
Well, not only that, but you look at the Ravens team, you lose Tyler Linderbaum to the Raiders. So you really want to help, the interior offensive line, and this is the guy to do it. I mean, he had 44 career starts in his career. You know how many sacks he allowed? Just 3. 4 years, just 3 sacks. He's been just old, reliable for Penn State. He's just the prototypical guard. Broad frame, strong hands. Once he gets his hands on you, great down blocker, able to really move people in the middle of the field. He is just a guy who you just want on your team. He creates the leverage, he moves people, and that's exactly what Derrick Henry wants on his team. Look at some of the weaknesses, a little slower, not really great at mirroring defenders. When you look at maybe a quicker defensive tackle or a blitzing linebacker, not the quickest guy in the world, below average, gets beaten a little bit, because of that quickness. But other than that, this is a great offensive guard and a guy that's really going to help the Ravens in that run game and protecting Lamar Jackson.
I think that is the key part about this. When you look at Penn State and what they do well, they run the ball. They were running it off of him left, right, and center. Didn't matter. He was able to get the running back where he needed to go, and I think that not only is going to help out the Ravens' RPO, but just their straight-up run game. I mean, I felt like there were times at the end of the season where, I don't know if Derrick Henry got bored or what, but he just started fumbling the ball. I mean, it felt like it got too easy, and he just got loose with it, and it was getting punched out left and right. He owned up to that, but I feel like just adding a little bit to that offensive line takes a lot of pressure off of Lamar, takes a lot of pressure off of him, and they can just play free again. I felt like the first 3 years of Lamar's career, that was free Lamar. He was free bird, and now he kind of got put in the cage for a little bit, some injuries, this, that, and the other, but now you have an elite running back, an elite quarterback. They've had that for now 3 years in a row. It's time. It's finally time for the Ravens to make that push.
UINDY provides some of the best vertical blocking, vertical push that you are going to see in this draft. And I don't think that you need the most mobile guards, most mobile interior offensive linemen if you're the Ravens, because I think it makes it easier on guys like Lamar Jackson to make the read. Once you are working down the field, you're going to have an offensive lineman down there with you in your pick right here, and that allows you to kind of navigate through the holes that he creates. He's going to have his defensive lineman, his linebacker, pushed up nearly 5 yards by the time that Lamar Jackson touches the ball. So he's going to have that extra protector up front, and he's going to have a chess piece, if you will, to move around, work around as he works upfield.
Well, if we're speaking chess pieces, he's might be a bit of a struggling rook. He struggles to go left and right with his lateral movement. That's the one big knock on this guy, but I think that's something that could be improved over the next couple of months come September. But that brings us to our next pick. When I think defense, I think this team right behind me. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't care when Tom Brady was on there. I was still thinking defense. Vita Vea. I mean, this team is defense, and I think they're going defense here. I think we're finally going to see the Miami guy get off the board. I'm honestly upset for him because I feel like it's disrespectful to see him this slow. He's going to be the 15th pick when he was as high. Some people had him at 2, I think. I think I saw one where he was at 2. That's insane that he's going to drop this far. And this is, I'm not going to compare him to Shador, who fell to the 5th day, but this is almost that level of a tragedy. I mean, this is a great player. Someone's going to get a steal here. I think it could be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but what would a guy like this provide for a Bucs team who's already playing solid defense?
I have 2 reasons why I want Ruben Bain to go this pick. One of them biased, one of them not. Number 1, Ruben Bain, because please Mekhi Lemon fall to the Jets. I want Mekhi Lemon to fall to the Jets so bad. But then we look at Ruben Bain here. This Ruben Bain was a player that we saw between the Jets going Arvo Reese or Ruben Bain at one point. And now he has an opportunity to fall here for a Jets team that, quite frankly, for a Buccaneers team, quite frankly, that could use the edge help. But like we said, this is where receiver could start to fall in for the Buccaneers because they just lost Mike Evans. And now receiver is a little bit of a need here for Baker. The Baker was an MVP candidate at one point. This is where I could also see Mekhi Lemon go, as much as it would hurt me to say it. I do think that receiver is another player that is in need for them. So we're going to see where they go, if that's defense, if that's offense. There's a lot of questions here, but the one thing I do know is that they either need to go edge or they need to go receiver. I think if they go anything other than that, they're making a huge mistake because the O-line's set and the secondary is as close to possible as set.
There are your two options, Caden. You're sitting in that chair. You picked up a couple phone calls. You talked to some teams. You talked to your team. What's the decision that you would make if you were in that room?
I just talked about Ruben Bain Jr. I just talked about the arms. But apart from the stat sheets, we need to watch the film because he does work around the length issue with his ability to find a low center of gravity. He's not working around tackles, he's working under tackles, and it's really an art form. His ability to get low to the ground, keep his momentum, keep his quickness, and get to the quarterback has been super undervalued to this point. However, it's when he gets caught on the block where that arm length really comes into an impactful state of action during the play. But if he's able to keep his mobility, stay low under these 6'6", 6'7" linemen, he'll be just fine.
5 sacks during the college football playoffs. One of those coming against Ohio State, as well as another tackle for a loss for him. A very solid player and showed up at the biggest stages, helped his team get to that national championship and could maybe help the Bucs get back to the big stage as well. I still think Baker Mayfield is playing championship level football. I don't think that's anything crazy to say. He was in the MVP conversation. He has been for the past 5 years or so. And I think it's well deserving. But Charles, what's the case for a receiver right here? You already kind of said they need more weapons, but if you're in there arguing, what are you saying right now?
Right now, I mean, if I'm saying offense, yeah, I mean, I'm saying we lost Mike Evans, let's replace him, but I don't necessarily think that's, option number one right here. I'm going defense. Jace has the pick and he's raising his hand. Jace, did they end up going defense?
The Miami kid is staying in Florida, heading to Tampa Bay. Ruben Bain Jr. There he finally goes as Ruben Bain will head to Tampa Bay. Obviously, the short arms was the concern, but he is heading off to Tampa.
Yeah, I mentioned this in the pre-draft. It was one of the more intriguing storylines of this draft. How much would teams take that wingspan into impact? And it seems like they did a lot. A potential top 10 pick. You guys mentioned he was as high as number 2, falls all the way down to number 15. And I really, really like this pick for Tampa Bay. You do get the guy played in college in Miami, so the fans are going to like him. And really, it fills a big need for them. You thought maybe even if Ruben Bain wasn't there, they might reach for another edge, but they get a guy, and they have to be very happy with this pick.
And he has that elite first step. He has the explosiveness off of the edge. But we really don't know how much the arms will impact him here in the NFL. But he's off to Tampa Bay. While we have a moment, the Jets are on the clock. We'll take a quick break, come back, talk about Ruben Bain, and start previewing the Jets once more. Back in a minute.
The pick is officially in for the New York Jets. Charles, not too happy about the little preview we got here in the studio, but Jace, the official word from our NFL insider.
Charles, you wanted a receiver to go to the New York Jets. You thought maybe Mekhi Lemon was an option here. Instead, why not go a tight end who can maybe play receiver because he's a little bit short at 6'3". Kenyon Sadiq is off to the New York Jets. This one surprises me. Sadiq, I wasn't sure if he was taken the first round given how small he is and has some issues sometimes with blocking, especially as a smaller tight end. Jackson, I know we've mentioned you weren't a big fan of him in the pre-show. He goes at number 16 to the Jets.
I said he shouldn't be a first overall pick. Part of the reason is he's 7th in arm percentile in all drafts picks. He's 15th in weight. He can't find a hole in his zone. He's got no route tree. He's honestly don't know what he does very good except sit down and hope the ball gets to him. I don't see him being, he can't block. He can't run routes. He can make tough catches. But is he going to get open enough to make those catches? I don't believe so. I don't like this pick at all. I will say he did have the best 40 ever as a tight end and the second best vert of all time.
Well, when he's 6'3" at tight end, that tends to happen.
That does help a little bit, and that's why they like him so much. He's very athletic, and that's all I think he really has is his athleticism.
I mean, Oregon had a very explosive offense, and he was a very big part of said offense. I feel like he was under a good coach in Dan Lanning who got him prepared for this level. I think you could maybe say a similar thing to how Brian Hartline gets his receivers ready at Ohio State. This Oregon team puts out a lot of good product. I look back to Tez Johnson. I mean, I feel like there are a lot of good players that have come out of Oregon. So kind of in that same boat of you're pulling on the history of the team, pulling on former players who have come out and using that to your advantage, at least if you're him, saying, look, this is what we have done. This is what I can do. And I think he shows a lot of potential. My player comparison I'm on here is a better Isaiah Likely. I don't know that that's the best comparison, but I think the footwork and the catching. I mean, he can catch the ball and he can get downfield. You guys say he's a bit undersized. That's going to be a problem when it comes to the linebackers he's going to have to run up against, but the speed is the thing that I'm going to look at for that. He's going to be able to outrun a ton of those guys, which is a very big advantage for him.
I think this makes your personnel, speaking for the Jets, difficult to line up against. You're thinking about him getting and blocking physical guys like linebackers, but those linebackers have to cover him. They have to drop back to that second, that third level of the field, and frankly, they're not going to be able to keep up with a 4.39. It's just not going to happen. So I think it's easy to look at this pick and say, why? But I think if you see it from a glass half full perspective, he can add a lot to an offense. Now, you're not going to run the ball 400 yards a game with this guy as your tight end. It's just not going to happen. But you have another option to throw the ball to for a team that needs someone to catch the 6-yard play and turn it into an 11-yard play.
Let me go back over to you, Charles, real quick, because your initial reaction was, well, we already have a guy. We had someone who was all right enough. Explain your case with that. I know you don't like this pick. Let's hear this little rant.
The New York Jets' leading receiver last year was Garrett Wilson, who played 8 games for them. That is really all I have to say. Mekhi Lemon, who is my favorite.
All right. Unfortunately, Charles having a little bit of technical difficulties. We will get his word in just a moment. Believe we have some faulty batteries. But, Caden, I'll turn back to you. Kind of a similar question in the fact that this guy provides a lot of versatility for a team that maybe needs it, but maybe already had a guy. What do you do to adjust and maybe address that situation? Because is this going to be a second option, or is he going to instantly jump over your starter?
It's hard to say that he's going to walk in and be your every down, somehow find Kenyon Sadiq. I just don't think that happens against a lot of modern defenses. And I think for Charles to make the case for Mekhi Lemon I think it's an educated thing to say. I think it's an educated point to make the case for. Really, Lemon is a guy who has shown a lot of talent down the field at a very high level come college football. It's an interesting pick, but I don't think it's harmful.
We'll go back over to Charles and maybe let me reframe that. Are you very upset with this pick, or is it just the pick you did not want?
The football gods cannot silence me. The Jets last year had their best receiver played 8 of their 17 games last year. 8 of their games. You have Mekhi Lemon, who in my opinion is receiver 2, maybe even 1. You sit there, you're like, oh, that's really cool. But we're going to go with the guy that's basically a receiver, but plays tight end. He's literally Mekhi Lemon, but worse. Yes, I get it that he plays tight end. That's really cool, and it's going to be really cool that he can go against linebackers, but what happens when they just put another corner on him? I mean, that's the thing. Yes, I like Sadiq. His talent is there, and as a tight end, he should be great. But you know who else played tight end and was undersized? N'Keal Harry. And N'Keal Harry sucked. So, yes, I'm okay with it. I think that there's potential there, and I really, really pray. I really want him to do so good that I can sit there and be a complete idiot on TV. I want to be in a compilation because that will mean that the Jets do something. But until then, I have not seen a Jets playoff game since I was 7 years old, and I'm graduating college next week. And this is not one of those moves to me that is going to take us in the right direction, because just like I said, there was an easy option here. 2 + 2 = 4, and I would say 2 + 2 = 5 with this situation, but that would have required us to at least be close. We were not even close with this pick, and I think this is a complete mess.
Let me ask you this question, because I think we see it a little bit more with the maybe offensive and defensive line, but I would say the receiver might be the easiest position to adjust to. You look at Julian Edelman. He was a quarterback turned wide receiver. You look at Braxton Miller for Ohio State about 10 years ago, quarterback turned wide receiver. I feel like this is a natural transition for him. Am I wrong in saying that? Because he's definitely undersized for a tight end, but I feel like he's a guy that could easily be transitioned, just not necessarily a slot, but a solid X out on the outside. He's not going to be your number one option, but he can drag away the defense. He can pull the safeties, do what you need him to do because of his size. It's going to be hard to throw one corner on him and just let him sit on an island, because he's going to jump up and catch that ball. That's where you get that Isaiah Likely comparison. But we'll go ahead and throw it over to Jace real quick. The Lions, they found some recent success with Dan Campbell, but still looking to get over the hump. Jace, is this pick going to do it for him?
I think it might. I think they needed some O-line help, and I think they went out and got it. And now they can flip Penei Sewell to left tackle, because their new right tackle is Blake Miller from Clemson. Blake Miller will play exclusively at right tackle, which will help Penei Sewell move over back to left tackle. This offensive line filling out pretty nicely there in Detroit. Nate, as you rejoin us, you're obviously offensive line guy, another offensive lineman going here with Blake Miller. What's your thoughts on his fit with Detroit?
Well, when you look at a guy like Blake Miller, he is Mr. Reliable. I know we said it before. This is the real deal. 54 career starts for Blake Miller. He set the all-time record at Clemson for most consecutive starts as a offensive non-special player. He's been there and he's done it all. I mean, you look at him, 8 sacks in the last 4 years. He's the guy, long arms, 6'7", 317. His player comp actually is Taylor Decker. Taylor Decker, 10 years at the Lions, and he was let go this past year. And now a new guy, basically the same play you look at to fill in his spot. Long arms, big hands, quick feet, very fluid, as he's just 315 pounds. So, a guy who can move at the right tackle, which really helps when you have a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, a guy who likes to run outside zone, like the screens. That's really in Blake Miller's wheelhouse. But some of the problems you see is, you mentioned, he is 6'7". He plays a little tall. So it means easy to get knocked off balance when bull rush to be a special. So you look at that. He's also been a little bit inconsistent hands and feet, meaning his feet go one way, his hands may not follow, or the vice versa. So he's not your top talent, obviously going 17th overall, but he's a guy with a little bit of work, can be the dominant right tackle in a really offensive line that looks really good moving forward for the Detroit Lions.
And guys, for the Lions, obviously they need some help on defense as well, with an edge rusher, a defensive tackle probably needed as well. But they go with an offensive tackle here. Do you think that was the right move, going O-tackle with their first pick of this draft?
I think it is. I mean, kind of similar to what you said. They needed something to take them to that next level, and I think bolstering that offensive line, it gives you more consistency. I think might be the most important part about it, is that they've dealt with a lot of injuries, especially come into the season. I mean, I can't remember a time in the past 5 years that the Lions have made it to the playoffs without somebody major part of their team being injured or having a minor injury carrying that into the first round. That's something that can't happen. So this offensive line pick builds that up and gives you a little bit more stability on that line, gives your running backs, like you said, some room to run on the outside. And this is a great pick because of the consistency. He's going to play. He's going to play 17 games. You don't have to worry about that. And that's just a weight off your shoulders if you're a coach, knowing that you have a guy that's going to be there for you.
Isaiah Pacheco loves this pick. Someone that is going to stand in front of you, put their body on the line for you, for a team like the Lions, who sees a very, very run-heavy scheme. I don't know where else he would go in this draft.
And I will say that Clemson definitely saw a little bit more of a run-heavy offense. You saw the struggles of Cade Klubnik over there, someone who we thought might be going pretty high in this draft. Not the case, but a lot of that had to do with the fact that they were running the ball because he quite honestly stunk a little bit. But, Charles, I'll turn it over to you. Offensive line, the right pick?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like you mentioned, Caleb Decker, a lot of these organizations like to normally keep with what they know, and Taylor Decker's been there for, like Nate mentioned, 10-plus years, and you lose him, then you bring in a player that's pretty much just like that. The coaches don't really have to re-change the scheme because you know what you're going to get out of him, and you know what the best thing you're going to get from Blake Miller is, like you mentioned, availability. Availability is the best ability, and he will be on the field for a Lions team that, quite frankly, has been not available, and I think that's going to be the biggest thing. Their NFC North rival, the Vikings, are now on the clock. So let's talk about the Vikings. The Vikings, where do they go here? What are you seeing here?
It's an interesting question because of how this year played out with McCarthy. I mean, I just feel like they're in a terrible situation quarterback-wise. They've got a lot of issues with that, and I wouldn't say the defense was particularly great either. So you could really go anywhere if you're the Vikings, but Kai Lemon's right there. Get him another weapon. I mean, you've shown that you can develop. Obviously, he's not going to be a Justin Jefferson level talent straight out of college, but you could develop him to get to that point. I don't think that's anything crazy to say. He might not be the best in the league, but you could get him to a point where he's getting you 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns, and that's what you need from him. I think that's what you're looking for this pick if you're the Vikings.
I mean, you talk about receiver. How many weapons does J.J. McCarthy need at this point? It's
Infinite.
getting
I don't think he has enough.
I mean, it's starting to get bad, and we mentioned that. I think that this is a team that's going to look on the side of defense. Quite personally, I think that the defense was a little bit disappointing last year. I think that they were just a few pieces away from being a solid playoff team again. And mind you, this was one of the best teams in the league 2 years ago. They go on to J.J. McCarthy, go away from a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Sam Darnold, which is an insane thing to say still to this day. And, you know, J.J. McCarthy, he's got to play better or he's going to be in that situation where they're going to look to replace him soon. But for now, I'm going defense. I think they got enough weapons. Jace, am I right?
Well, before we get to the pick, we do have a trade to announce. This is for a future pick here in this draft. Pick number 20, which was initially the Dallas Cowboys, is being traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles will trade their 23rd pick along with 114 and 137 to the Cowboys for their 20th pick and a 7th round pick. So that'll be a few picks down the road. But for now, the Vikings, they go with the big boy, defensive tackle Caleb Banks out of Florida. The 6'6", 327, huge dude at defensive tackle is heading to the Minnesota Vikings. Maybe one of their needs, but not the guy I thought they were going to go here.
No, I think Peter Woods is a much better defensive tackle to look at in this draft. But let's talk more about Caleb Banks. Like you mentioned, he has great size. He's really athletic, a lot of good traits. He's been in college for a while. He started in 2021, redshirted that year, was out all of last year, just played in 3 games, just recorded 6 total tackles. So he coming off injury with a foot injury, the size, the athleticism, his comp, Chris Jones and DeForest Buckner, it's a pretty good comp when you look at the athletic side of things. But look at the weaknesses. He looked a little heavier in 2025, a little slower. Yep. He plays high. You look at all the other things, he just lacks a lot of, the get off, I don't know, the motor maybe is kind of the word you use there. But, if he gets it right and the Vikings can get him to the right place, I mean, he could be a monster or he could be a dud. And that's why I think this is a little bit of a too early for Caleb Banks to go. I'd much rather see, Peter Woods go off the board here because I do believe he's the best D tackle in this draft.
I think we're going to have to launch an investigation into the lunchroom over at Florida, or maybe their meal prep specialist, because this is the second guy in a row that they've had come out. You look back to Watson, I can't remember his first name, but he was 450 pounds coming out of Florida. I mean, that's ridiculous. This guy is very big, and he can use his size to his advantage, but you're also talking about taking the speed with that. He is a decently quick guy, but I just feel like I don't know that this was the right take. I feel like they had better options. I don't know that this was the first defensive tackle I would have taken off the board.
They were in a spot where they could pick the best available. They could pick the most highly touted. But there's not a whole lot that's going to alter the fate of Minnesota this year. So this, to me, is definitely an investment pick, right? You're picking and you're reaching to hope to reach that near ceiling and Caleb Banks in front of us here, which, once again, at near 400. That should be a pretty high ceiling considering he's already plugging both the A and B gap right now.
A very high ceiling, but maybe a low floor, Charles. What do you think about this pick?
Listen, man, I've been a firm believer that before last year's injury that Caleb Banks was going to be the best defensive tackle in this draft. I was always a fan of him, and I think that he is one of those players that's suffering from the injury, and I think that's a lot of the reason why people have Peter Woods over him. I think talent-wise, if you can look past the injury, he is the best defensive tackle, and I think he will prove himself to be that way. Yes, he's gotten a little bit bigger. Yes, he got hurt, but size isn't always a problem whenever you play defensive tackle, and I think that, yes, if he can learn to move with it, especially if that leg can heal right, I think that we could see him make a very big impact for this team. And, there are going to be people that complain about it. I'm not going to be one of them. I like the pick for Caleb Banks.
All right, that brings us to our next pick. Here is going to be the Carolina Panthers. Some options here. I felt like they're another team that could go with a wide receiver. Bryce Young could use some more weapons as always, but there is the question of, is he protected enough, Charles? That's where I'll turn to you. Do you go with a lineman here, try and protect Bryce Young a little bit more, give him all that much more time to make a decision in the pocket, or do you give him a weapon to throw to?
I think you protect him. I think the weapons, actually had a lot of people really step up last year. I think that the receiver-wise, you had Tech McMillan, obviously, who was your receiver one for the future. And you also had some other people really step up for Bryce Young. This was a playoff team, mind you, that is now just looking to make those little important plug-in pieces. And I think good teams make the non-flashy picks. And I think that O-line's the way to go. Jace?
You're absolutely right. O-line is the way to go, and it's Monroe Freeling out of Georgia. Another huge, tall guy at 6'7", Monroe Freeling is, as he heads to Carolina. You thought maybe Mekhi Lemon could be an option here at 19 as receivers was a need, but Monroe Freeling is instead the guy. They try to bulk up the offensive line. This guy's much taller than Bryce Young. Keep that in mind. Bryce Young might not be able to see over him when he rolls out of the pocket, but Monroe Freeling is their pick at 19.
And when you look at Monroe Freeling, not as many starts as some of these other guys we mentioned. Just 18 starts at Georgia. But he's a very similar to a Blake Miller. He's tall, has long arms, big hands, and able to really, move quickly with, faster defenders. And that's something that's we're kind of seeing a shift in the NFL right now to those faster, linebackers walking down, playing defensive end, smaller. Micah Parsons, he's not that big of a defensive end, 250 compared to, some of the other, 300, 285-pound defensive ends. So you're seeing this change, and the offensive line is kind of changing with it. Some of the key, not maybe the strong suit of Monroe Freeling, you look at, people like to cross his face, defensive ends is what I mean. He's not very good at, the strength side of things. So people can cross his face, things like that, lunges at the corner as well. So, when you get to the top of your key, you kind of lunges to when you're going around the corner. So he's a project player, I think, as well. You were looking to add a little bit more mass to the player, but overall, I think it's a good pickup for the Panthers.
Diving a little deeper into that, Nate, how do you find that improvement out of him? If you're coaching him, if you're in there giving him some reps, what are the drills you're maybe going through? What are you trying to see improvement-wise out of him?
Well, the biggest thing, I think, it has to be the strength. As we mentioned, he's tall, he's skinny, 315, which, you may not think is skinny, but we look at offensive tackles, it can be pretty skinny. So get him a little more in the weight room, add some more mass there, and that's going to help him in a lot of those key things. Obviously, you lose a little bit of speed, but, being able to really stop the guys from crossing your face. That's the biggest thing. A lot of stunts in the NFL right now with the defensive ends, with the linebackers. And if a guy just crosses your face and it's easy for him to do that, that's going to be a problem for your quarterback, especially Bryce Young when he has someone flying into his face. So I think adding the mass is the biggest key for Monroe Freeling, and also, just getting comfortable. 18 starts, it's not a lot of time at the college level to really get a feel for how things are going. And I know you played a lot of good players in the SEC. Well, the NFL is even better when it comes to edge rushers and outside linebackers.
I feel like that's every lineman's dream here, and I need you to eat just a little bit more. And I know he's probably going to be happy to hear that. Maybe have to get in the weight room a little bit on top of that, but I think this is a good fit for them. Another team that has just moved into prime position to maybe pick up a prime player, the Philadelphia Eagles. Where are you looking right here, Charles? What is the number one option if you're the Eagles, a team that has been there, done that, but came up short last year? What changes are you making in the offseason, because you really don't know what's going on with A.J. Brown?
The Eagles are the definition of one of the 7 deadly sins. They are a gluttony without any doubt. This team comes in, they keep taking and taking and taking. They're always the best at most positions, but they continue to get more because why not? They did it last year, and I have a feeling they're going to do it again. As they jumped up, and there's only one player I think that is even close to jump up worthy, and it's Makai Lemon. And I have a feeling that the rich continue to get richer. Some drown while others die of thirst, and I have a feeling that the Eagles are going to be drowning in receivers right now with them taking Makai Lemon. That's who my guess is, and Jace, just go ahead and tell me now.
Well, I think we all know that A.J. Brown is now, on out of there. Makai Lemon is indeed heading to Philadelphia. This doesn't surprise anybody. They jumped up. They got their guy, A.J. Brown. You're a goner. Enjoy New England while you can. Makai Lemon heading to the Philadelphia Eagles, Jackson. Kind of surprised he fell here at 20. And for Philadelphia to get a guy of this magnitude to replace A.J. Brown, huge.
Absolutely. Like you said, it's hard to see him. I thought, top 15 easily. In my mind, maybe top 10, he falls all the way to 20. A steal, be great on the other side of Devontae Smith. He has the ability. He can catch any catch. He's not the tallest person. He's not the biggest size. Doesn't have the biggest catch radius. But if it's in his radius, he's coming down with it. 66% contested catch rating. He's going to come down with any ball if it's remotely close.
And you have him compared to Amon-Ra St. Brown, another former Trojan at USC, and I can see why. They have a very similar play style. He isn't the fastest guy on the field, but he's going to make that contested catch. He's going to make those plays in the middle of the field when he needs to.
And like you said, he's going to find the holes in the zone. I feel like that's what Amon-Ra does well. If you put him on a route, an option route, he'll make sure to make that right decision, and there's not a question. He'll find that right spot. He'll be able to sit down in the zone, make the catch, and he might not get the most yards after the catch either, but he'll make that catch worth it. And he'll do it in the first 5 yards, first 10 until the end of the field. He's perfect.
I'd say that my comparison is last year. It goes back to last year, Matthew Golden. I felt like he just kept falling and falling and falling, and every pick we were like, well, they could take Matthew Golden. They could take him here, but they just didn't. And I feel like that's the same thing that happened with Makai Lemon here. He's a great player, but it just wasn't the right fit at the right time. You got to think about a lot of those picks were very valuable. I'm looking at, I think, like the Rams pick might have been the only one that I really don't like. The Jets picking up the tight end. I don't know that I love it, but it's not a bad pick. It's going to help their offense out. This is the one where, like you said, they might be getting a little bit too greedy, putting all their chips into the offense. I mean, we saw how that's working out for the Bengals right now. It's not exactly a cup of tea over there, but I think that this takes the place of – actually, I take that back. I don't think this takes the place of Brown. I mean, you're talking about – the best receiver in the league right now, maybe. I mean, A.J. Brown can go up and get you a couple of passes. He just hasn't been targeted at all. I throw him in the conversation with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, no doubt about it, every day of the week. I mean, I'm not going to compare him to Megatron because I don't think he's anywhere close to as good as him, but his ability to go up and catch a ball, high point it over top of a cornerback, second to none.
As an organization, you don't love to see A.J. Brown just walk, but I think that you made out like a bandit in this case. And Philly has always been good at going out and getting their weapons. And I think that you do have the luxury of being able to focus on offense this early in the draft because the last few years you've been saying, okay, Georgia defense, and on that side of the ball, you're looking pretty good. Eagles are always going to be stout on the defensive end of the football. So I think even if you did consider this a little out of the Eagles' range in terms of what they need, one thing about Philadelphia, they're going to give Jalen Hurts a weapon, and they're going to give him two. And now with a re-signing Dallas Goedert, they're going to be just fine throwing the rock.
I mean, another guy that I was thinking was almost a perfect replacement for A.J. Brown was Omar Cooper Jr. I think they're a very similar build, a similar style of play. That catch in the end zone from Cooper reminds me a lot of A.J. Brown, some of the plays that he makes. So I thought they might just sit back and see if Lemon falls to them and then take what's available offensively, but they're being proactive. They go out and they get the player that they want. But as we look forward, we continue on to the Steelers. People hosting this nice draft, Pittsburgh, from what I've seen, has been pretty awesome. They have a nice venue set up there. I've had just about everybody at ESPN out there to talk at some point, but they're on the clock. It's time for them to make a decision, and still haven't heard from Uncle Aaron Rodgers, so we assume he's going to play, but you never know. That's one of those questions that we leave up until the last week or so before the season starts. But if you're in that draft room right now, Charles, what's the talk?
There's one glaring thing that I'm seeing on my draft sheet right now, and it is the lack of DBs taken in this draft. And I don't know if I'm going DB for Pittsburgh, but we got to start looking forward to seeing when those DBs are going to go, when those cornerbacks are going to go, because, you know, you have Jermon McCoy, who obviously had the injury, but he's another top guy. You have Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. You have all these other guys that have not gone yet that I think we're going to start to see go, but we also have some receivers, Omar Cooper. We have Denzel Boston, who's starting to come up, while also edges are in a big market right now. So it'll be interesting to see where the Steelers go here, because they're a team that has been stuck in mediocrity. They're a team that has been unable to make that big move. And I think that if you're looking here, you're looking at one of those premier positions of, you know, you don't need an edge rusher, but you could use a receiver. You could use a DB here. That's where I'm looking at, because I think the D-line they're chilling right now, D-line. You know, I can even see them maybe reaching back a little bit for O-line if need be.
I don't mind receiver here. I feel like Pittsburgh has always been the capital for the most mid-tier receivers ever. You know, you have DK, George Pickens was okay. Even Chase Claypool we'll give him a B just because.
They need more mediocre receivers.
B-. You know, and that's a lot of money.
Chase Claypool over Michael Pittman?
You know, I'm not a big Michael Pittman guy. Chase Claypool's not better than Michael Pittman. No,
okay.
No, that's a personal issue with Michael Pittman Jr. However, like I said, I think you have a chance to go up and get Omar Cooper. Omar Cooper Jr., I think that while it may be a chance, it's a good one. He has a lot of upside. He has the ability to make the star-spangled play, if you will. And I think Aaron Rodgers needs a receiver like that at this point in his career.
He needs something to convince him to come back to Pittsburgh. It seems like every year he just needs a little bit more convincing, and it's not always necessarily the monetary value that is the issue. It's just the will to play. I mean, he's in his 40s at this point. You're talking about any day he could just kick off his shoes and say, I'm done. I'm not going to play any more football. But Steelers, they're looking for Aaron Rodgers. They're looking for a good pick here. Jace, what's up?
They're looking for a guy to protect whoever their quarterback ends up being. It'll be Max Iannaccio, who goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He had a great Senior Bowl and flew up the projections because of it, and 21 was the spot for him to Pittsburgh. So more trenches as the trench run continues right now. Another offensive lineman off the board. Iannaccio, an interesting one comparing to what we saw from him last season in action.
Yeah, and when you look at the talent left, I mean, a lot of the top tackles have already gone, and the Steelers needed an offensive guy, and an offensive lineman, excuse me. You look at him, 6'6", 320. He really has a lot of agility for a guy that size, a lot of athletic ability, and that really helps when you have a guy in, Aaron Rodgers, who I think is going to be the quarterback, maybe not, a guy who doesn't move a lot, it's a guy who can really be a good blocker for you. Like I said, really good basketball feet for him. I mean, really good at moving laterally for the Arizona State product. His weakness is a little bit, his hands kind of float a little outside, which, as you know, is tend for a lot of holding penalties.
Yeah.
So that is one of the key things. And also, he needs a little bit better in the run protection, pad level in the run protection to move guys, especially who are very, massive defensive tackles when you're down blocking. You have to get low, right? And that's kind of one of the problems with him is that he likes to play a little too high. That kind of hurts him in the run game. But overall, I think it's a really good pick for the Steelers because he's a guy who could be kind of that staple for years to come.
Another question for the Steelers is, who is their quarterback? Will Aaron Rodgers come out of wherever hole he's hiding in, be the quarterback, or will it be Will Howard? Will it be God knows who, Mason Rudolph even with a dent in his head? Anyways, guys, the Pittsburgh Steelers, Max Iannaccio, what do you think?
Well, you can't go wrong picking offensive line. And I think that's where Pittsburgh kind of finds himself at. If you do go receiver in this spot and you have nobody at quarterback, then you essentially waste your pick. You don't get any better. You still see... Well, you're lucky to see you're 8-8 if you do get there after picking a wide receiver that doesn't pan out. So with this, you can go back to that foundation kind of mindset, build your offensive line, wait for free agency, wait for somebody to fall out of the sky who's a competent quarterback, and then go from there. But until that point, you have limited options.
I mean, at this point, it almost seems like the Steelers are just kind of relying on, like, Garrett Nussmeier, maybe Carson Beck falling, being a free agent. They can just pick him up. Like, that's kind of what I'm thinking the Steelers are trying to do right now. They don't need it. Obviously, if Aaron Rodgers comes back, they're going to be in good hands. But as it sits right now, it is a mystery in Pittsburgh. But whoever it is will be protected. We'll be back on the UINDY TV Draftcast with pick number 22. back on the south side of Indianapolis. We're about, 5 hours away from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, maybe 6 if we're driving slow. But we have the next pick in. We're heading over to our NFL specialist, Jace Hodge, with the pick.
We've already had one Miami Hurricane edge rusher. Let's go ahead and take the other one off the board as well. Akeem Mesidor is heading to the Los Angeles Chargers. I don't love this for the Chargers. The Chargers, who need a lot of offensive line help for Justin Herbert, who about died last year, if we're being frank, because offensive line could not protect him at all during the 17 games and the one playoff game that they inevitably lost. But they go defense instead with Akeem Mesidor. This guy can be pretty good, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. He was very good at college throughout the course of his career, played 6 collegiate seasons. That's one of the things about him. He is 25 years old. He does have a slight injury history when it comes to his foot, has had a couple surgeries, so that could be potentially a concern. But in terms of technical skills, I don't know how much better you get in terms of defensive edge. In his career, 35.5 sacks, third in NCAA history. Obviously helps playing 6 seasons, but is just such a smart player, has such a relentless motor, and knows how to get to the quarterback and can tackle him behind the line of scrimmage. Very effective in that. Could be a good NFL player, just not sure how long his career could be.
And obviously was part of that very big defensive line that Miami had that led to the national championship game. Maybe got overshadowed a bit by Ruben Bain, but still lands in the first round as well, guys.
And I think that's probably the right spot. I mean, I think you're looking at another situation where the Chargers might have been trying to trade up. I think they might have called Pittsburgh and said, yo, like, what's going on? We kind of want an offensive lineman in Pittsburgh. They hung up the phone pretty quickly. I don't think they entertained that at all, and they just kind of got stuck with whatever they could get. And this isn't a whatever you can get type of pick. This is going to be a game changer defensively. It's just not what they needed here. I think that's safe to say. Am I wrong, Charles?
I agree. I mean, like you mentioned, the O-line is definitely the biggest issue here, but also a lot of the first-round talent O-line guys are starting to leave. Even some of the beginning second-round talent guys are starting to not be available anymore. So, the D-line is still something that is somewhat of a need for the Chargers. Bringing in Akeem, the guy that, like you mentioned, was shadowed by Ruben Bain, but it's a pretty dang good shadow to be behind. And he was, like you said, Ruben Bain's partner in crime. He made the Hurricanes' edge as good as it was. And I think that having him bring in, yes, you need O-line, but you can wait a little bit because there's so much O-line talent in this draft. And like I mentioned, we're starting to get to those second-round guys where if you start reaching, now we're going to be like, well, maybe we should stop a little bit. Maybe we should, chill out on the O-line. Either I would trade back or, like I said, I like the picking of Akeem. I know that it's not the best fit for them, but he does what he does, and I think he's going to be a good fit for the Chargers.
I think that you're making a good point when you say that, Charles, because we are seeing a lot of teams look up and down their roster, find a 3 and a number over 4, and they're picking about the biggest guy that they could find on their sheet. We've seen that a lot to this point. So props to this organization for finding the most talents left on the board. I think you get a really good day one talent. Mid-season, I feel like he's going to be playing at a really, really high level. And it never hurts your defense to have a little bit of extra pressure on the quarterback.
35.5 sacks in his career, tied for third most in NCAA history. Caden, what does success look like immediately for the Chargers with him on the team?
For the Chargers, it has to be a playoff game where you compete. It's not even a win at this point, but you need to compete in a playoff game. You need to find some hope. And defensively, I think this does help because Justin Herbert is a competent quarterback. When given the opportunity and given the weapons, he can make a play happen. But what happens is the Chargers find themselves in so many 38, 37 games where they're up there near 40 points and they can't find any sort of defense towards the end of the game.
We talk defense. That's exactly where we are looking here. If we head over to the Dallas Cowboys, they are in much need of a defensive player after letting go of what some would consider one of the best defensive players in football right now. And they let him go to Green Bay. And now they're dealing with the repercussions of that, a terrible defense. It starts right here. Charles, I look to you. Where do you go if you are the Dallas Cowboys? You've got a couple of different options. Jermad's there. You've got your choice of safety or corner. Do you go line? Do you go secondary? What's the choice here?
I would go secondary here. I think they could use a little more secondary help because the secondary isn't always healthy. They have the talent, but they're not always available, and I think that is the big thing for them. But the question of tonight when it comes to the Cowboys is I think that they need some secondary help, maybe some inside linebacker help. They got Arvo Reese who can play on the edge, and I think, I think this team is known for reaching. So they're going to take the player that they like. And whether that's the right fit, who knows? But this team has a habit of kind of shooting a little bit from the moon and taking that player that they want. This is their third pick already, mind you. So, I mean, they're going to take a player that they really want, and they're not going to worry about anything else other than that.
This was kind of what I said at the beginning. Like, they are in a position to do whatever they would like. They can jump. They can risk it. This guy could be a complete flop, and I think they'll be fine. They'll look back at this draft and say, it was still pretty good. We got some talent out of it, but I think we look over to the offensive side. They've got things figured out. Is there any world where they take an offensive player, Caden?
I don't think it would matter even if they did. Dallas always finds a way, in the worst way possible. But really, I think in this day and age, I think depth is more needed on the defensive end than it is offensively. Because usually you have your guy at the skill spots, right? At the line, it helps to have a few extra guys in the mix. But defensively, we've seen the Colts personally where every year their secondary is just ravaged, and the D-line is gone by game 8. And at that point, you're wishing you had draft picks just like this.
I will say, when they picked up CeeDee Lamb, they had two of the best receivers in football at the time. So they've transitioned him into being their best guy. There's nothing saying they won't take an Omar Cooper Jr. here, but I think there's a lot more value to be gained by picking up a defensive player. Jace, we turn back to you once again because I've got a question before we get to the pick. I want to hear your opinion on this. I heard Charles, heard Caden. What do the Cowboys do here? Because it seems like the obvious choice is secondary, but it seems like they never go with the obvious choice in Dallas.
Sorry, what was the question again? I'm getting the graphics going here. You're coming in a bad spot.
Our insider is getting the inside information.
Yeah.
That is a part of the draft. We have to have him getting us our information. But just asking, what does a successful pick here look like for the Cowboys? Do they reach? Do they try and get a defensive lineman to replace number 11, or do they move on and just say, we need secondary?
I mean, you would think that secondary is a big need here at corner. I mean, you already got your safety in Caleb Downs, but you'd still need an edge rusher to kind of fill the gap that you lost with, losing Parsons last year, trading him to the Green Bay Packers. You picked one up back from Green Bay, obviously in the offseason, but you could still use an edge rusher to your advantage. And when we're talking about that, while I'm already having this information now, the Cowboys will pick up Malachi Lawrence from the University of Central Florida. Bit of a surprise one here. Didn't really have him high on our expected boards. Malachi Lawrence from UCF will go to the Cowboys.
Yeah, there were a few edge rushers that we thought might go ahead, but the Cowboys earlier on decided to go with Downs. We thought they might go with Reuben Bay, and we thought they might end up going with edge at some point in this draft, and they do. Seems like they like Malachi Lawrence from UCF. He generates some consistent pressure. He has pretty long arms. He has good reach, but he can be over-aggressive sometimes. Too aggressive can lead to a lot of missed opportunities, missed tackles, and those can lead to really big plays. So he has some of the tools. He needs to develop some discipline, but I think the Cowboys could have gotten a better player at this position.
I really like it, and I'll tell you why. Because he's a chase-you-down type of guy, and in a league where quarterbacks are running more than ever, I think that is a very important piece to add to this team. I mean, you're talking about a guy with some speed. He's the perfect size, in my opinion, to do what they are going to ask of him. They're going to ask him to be a Micah Parsons, a quick off the edge, pressure the quarterback, get your sacks, force a couple fumbles. That's what he has to do for this team. He's going to have to be a game changer. It's what Jerry Jones is expecting. I think he can do that. I absolutely think he can.
We always talk about range when we're talking about defensive backs, corners, and safeties, but to have that range off the line playing against guys like Lamar who are working out of the pocket, like Jalen Hurts will move every now and then, and even a bigger Daniel Jones, Josh Allen type guy that can take off. Having a weapon that's mobile at the line of scrimmage is going to save you on a lot of 3rd and 4, 3rd and 6 spots where that draw is seen late.
That ability to track down the ball, figure out where it is after you shed your block, I feel like that's a bit of an underrated skill that people don't really talk about. He's got it. He can find the ball, and he can get to it. Charles, I turn to you. Dallas, we talked about it. Need some defense. This is a good start right here. Is it a perfect pick in your mind?
Perfect picked, I'm not going to say that because I don't necessarily think there was one. If I was going anywhere, like I said, I was going secondary. But at the same time, like you mentioned, this is a guy that deserved more spotlight, and the reason he didn't get a lot of it is because he played in Orlando and he played for UCF. And I think that was the biggest problem for him is that we see sometimes, especially with edge rushers, we saw it with Mike Green last year, where if you play at a school that isn't necessarily like a top 10, top 25 school, you're not going to get as much of that spotlight. And I think that Lawrence has that potential. Like you said, he can chase you down. There are a lot of mobile quarterbacks, and if you're not mobile, good luck, because you got to try and catch up to this guy or try and get away from him. The biggest problem for him will be breaking that line. But whenever you have the amount of talent that the Cowboys now have on this D-line, especially bringing in Arvell Reese, there are going to be a lot of other people focused on everyone else but Malachi Lawrence, and that's where Malachi Lawrence can win his one-on-ones and get to the backfield and make a big play.
And I think when it comes to the big man, we're seeing more and more that they're needing just that extra little bit of help to get in. I think Will Campbell was a great example of that. He just wasn't ready, I don't feel like. He did all right. He did, but they just needed more. They needed a little bit better protection out of him. They just couldn't get it. And I think that you go here and you get someone on the defensive side that will be an immediate game changer. We're back to the Browns, Jace. You have the word.
I do have the word. They already got Spencer Fondo at tackle. I said they might need a receiver later down the road. They indeed go with the receiver option with Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M. A very speedy receiver here goes to the Cleveland Browns as they get their guy.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I love him. I think he's got the best routes. I think he's very fast. I think he can run any route at any time. He can work well. He's very well-rounded. And a lot of his issues come with having a quarterback like Marcel Reed, who was a run-first guy. He wasn't trying. He'd one receiver, two options. It was throw to KC or run it himself. So his issues became that 10% drop rate we'll look at. And some of that was he kind of jumps when he doesn't need to. Some balls that would hit him in the chest, he jumps. He'll get hit, can't hold on to it. And then just tracking the ball over the middle. Those are two issues he's had all year. Again, I think he was a top. I think that's something easy you can fix with a receiver. That's why he was second on my board, on my list of who I believe of wide receivers, right behind Cardinal Tate.
And for the Browns, they needed a receiver, to be frank. They needed a receiver, but still the question for them is, who's quarterback? No one knows. I mean, now they have someone to throw to at least, as Concepcion goes to the Cleveland Browns guys. I think this is the right pick for them. There's still other receivers that were on the board, but Concepcion may be the top one that was left.
I think Concepcion has a lot of talent. However, the equation of unstable quarterback room and 10% drop rate equaling success is not adding up to me. I think that this is probably one of the last teams that I want to see take this receiver at this point. A 10% drop rate is not good. And you can have all the skill in the world, and you can find 10 yards per carry after the catch, but if you're not catching the ball in the first place, how much value do you provide a team that's looking for anyone to even throw a slant at this point?
Yeah. Look at the first year of the Green Bay Packers with Jordan Love. I mean, they might have put butter on the ball every single game. They couldn't catch anything. You had Watson down the field, couldn't catch anything. Christian Watson, or Watkins, whichever one it is, they all sucked. They were very, very bad. Green Bay had to completely restructure their wide receiver room to get it to where it needed to be. And I don't know that this is the right pick simply because the offense isn't there. That's not necessarily – I feel like wide receiver, yeah, they need one, but if you don't have a quarterback, what are you going to do with the receiver? Who's going to throw him the ball? At that point, he's just going to be running down the field. It's going to be a very similar situation, I feel, to what he was dealing with at Texas A&M. Marcel Reed was a good quarterback, but he was a run-first type of guy that couldn't necessarily throw the ball, and he's going to get thrown into a system with Shedeur Sanders, who is turned into a run-first quarterback who can sometimes throw the ball. So I just don't see this pairing as being great. Dylan Gabriel, not a good fit. None of those quarterbacks scream, hey, this is a good pickup. This guy's going to get 1,000 yards in the next 3 years. I don't see it.
Here's what I say with them is with this interesting quarterback room that they have, Casey kind of opens up an opportunity for some fun because he can be used in a lot more than catching. You talk about how hard he is to tackle. You talk about how fast he is. I see a lot of jet sweeps, pop passes from the back. I see a lot of interesting things.
A lot of Xavier Worthy in him. Almost.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of using that speed in the backfield and, giving Shedeur an option to kind of just toss it away and let him make a play. Because we saw it last year with another guy that does really good and is secure, Harold Fannin Jr., a guy that just, you give him the ball, you hit him in the chest, he's going to catch it. Now you have a guy that you don't need to hit him in the chest, or you better hit him in the chest or he's going to drop it. But if you hit him in the outside in a place where there's almost a toddler could catch it, he can make a move. Because he's fast, he's speedy, he's versatile, and in that route running as well, gives a little bit of error ability for the quarterback because if you make yourself so open, you give yourself a chance for if Sanders messes up the throw, you're so incredibly open to where you have the opportunity to make a play that maybe someone that doesn't have as good as route running makes. So I think that's the big thing with KC. I don't necessarily hate the fit. I would have preferred just about any other team, but I can see the vision there of you can do a little bit of that West Coast style and kind of change up what Browns football is because of the opportunity now to give Sanders that safe RPO option that he really needs.
So you're saying kind of the opposite. Rather than bringing in a guy and having him be better because of the players he's around, they're trying to bring in a guy to make the players they already have a little bit better. I can definitely understand that, but like I said, the 21st pick right there, I mean, the 24th pick, I just don't know where we're a little behind there. But
flying through.
We'll move on to our next pick. The Chicago Bears have been in a bit of turmoil, I would say, because they got to where they needed to be with Caleb Williams, but came up a little bit short this year. It was a good season, though. I think that is the key. This is the first building block, maybe even the second building block for this team. They're ready to take the third step, playoff victory, maybe make their way to a conference championship. This team has the potential. What do they need to make, or what move do they need to make here to get the guy that they need?
The Bears are in that situation where they are good, and they are really good right now. I actually enjoy this team, and I hate to say it because I know a lot of Bears fans that absolutely drive me crazy, but I mean, this team is just a few picks away from being a potential playoff threat. And I think that the biggest thing that we're going to see from them is they don't necessarily need O-line as much. They don't need as many weapons. So what they do need is a little bit of secondary help. They could use a little bit of better defensive line. And I think that's what I'm looking for, helping to build the Bears defense a little bit, because this team unfortunately fell under the habit of being down by a lot of points and then having to fight their way back up. Well, if you don't allow the team to score a lot of points, you don't got to fight back. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, the Bears do such a good job, especially in the third and fourth quarter, but they allowed so many points in the first and second that if you can allow to get rid of those deep threats, if you can make teams uncomfortable by taking, I would say, a DB of some sort or maybe a good edge rusher, that's what you want to do right here.
Tell you, I was honestly thinking safety. Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon. I felt like another well-coached, well-disciplined guy that could help out a defense that needs a little bit of help back there. Jace, is the word in?
I think the word was in right when you said that name. Dylan Thieneman is heading to the Chicago Bears. For the first time since 2018, the Bears have used a first-round pick on a defensive player. Last one being Roquan Smith. That turned out pretty darn well. So Dylan Thieneman heading to the Chicago Bears at safety. The Bears needed a safety, Heaven, and Thieneman, pretty good plug-and-play kind of guy.
Yeah, this whole draft we haven't seen many DBs go, but I say he's a very versatile player, and he best plays in his zone, but has man coverage abilities as well, and he's a true plug-and-play safety, I would say. I think this is a really good fit for him.
And you look at his weaknesses, though. I mean, there's a few that you watched. At Purdue, at Oregon, times he had some weaknesses. What were those weaknesses for him?
I would say he easily kind of falls into those traps. He might get a little sidetracked. He needs to really just stay locked into the game, and he falls in those. He can get stuck against those bigger bodies, I would say. But overall, I think he's a good, versatile player, and he can compete in the NFL.
Guys, a former Purdue Boilermaker making a short trip up from West Lafayette to Chicago. Obviously, it was in Oregon the last year or two, but a pretty simple trip for him.
You're looking at a lot of production when it comes to Thieneman, and I think that might be the exact thing that the Bears were looking for, someone to go out, get them the numbers, because sometimes it does just come down to, hey, I need you to get me 10 sacks this year, I need you to give me 12 sacks this year, just put some pressure on the opposing quarterbacks. That's all they need, I think. I said they could have went secondary, but they go hand in hand. If you get pressure on the quarterback, it's going to help out your secondary because there's going to be some errant throws coming their way, and that makes it all that much easier to pick it off.
I was thinking Emmanuel McNeil-Warren at this point, but I think that Thieneman's the more aggressive pick in this scenario. As you say, Jake, he is a player, especially in the defensive backfield, looking to make the play. A huge number of forced fumbles on the season, 11 in his career. He's got sideline to sideline range, and I feel like for the Bears, who have the ability now to really start putting their foot on the gas, looking to win the division, looking to get past the first round of the playoffs, really looking to make a big run this year, why not, right?
Charles, this is another guy that made a lot of improvement at his final stop at Oregon under a very good coach in Dan Lanning, along with a very good team. How does that translate for the Bears? How do they see instant success out of this pick?
Well, I was fortunate enough to get to do defenders. I got to do a lot of the linebackers and focus on a lot of the DBs. And Thieneman was my number 2 safety in this draft behind Caleb Downs, of course. And I like what he can do because you can put him anywhere. And I think that's the biggest thing. He can play in the deep zones, which is something that the Bears play really well in, but he can also play a little bit of sub linebacker. He reminds me of what a lot of people wanted and thought Jamal Adams would be. Whenever Jamal Adams came into the league from LSU, he came into the league, and he was that kind of guy that you put at sub linebacker, and he's going to get you 100 tackles. This guy had 92 tackles, and he only played just significantly less games than they do in the NFL. So, I mean, give him 3-4 more games, and this is a 120 tackle kind of guy, and that is very impressive. So you mentioned this is a guy you're going to throw in, and you want 10 sacks. This is a guy I want to throw in. I want 120 tackles from you. I want you to stop the runs. I want you to stop them at 3-4 yards, and that's going to be the biggest thing with Dylan because he's a winner. He absolutely is a locker room guy, and for a Bears team that is so close to winning, you bring in a guy that has captain potential for you, and he's going to be able to bring in those tackles. He's not going to be flashy. He's not going to have 5-6 interceptions in a season, but he's going to do the dirty work. His jersey is going. If they wear white, his jersey is going to be dirt stained by the end of the game, and that's what you want in Chicago here.
Might not be able to get as many sacks as I was asking for. I feel like 10 for a free safety might be asking just a little bit too much, but it's definitely not out of the question. He's a guy that can get downhill and make a tackle, which is how you get some sacks. So we look at that, a good pick, I think, for the Bears, a team that is building off of one very good draft already last year, has now taken a big step in the right direction to getting off to another good start. Jace, the hand is raised, but I don't...
pick. It's for 2 trades that we have to update right now. The Houston Texans have moved up to number 26, with the Buffalo who moved back 2 spots, and also in 27, the Niners traded back to 30 with the Miami Dolphins. So the next 2 picks are the Texans and the Miami Dolphins. They are the 2 that are up right now. Texans pick is in. We'll get that to you in just a minute. But the Texans, they move up 2 spots right now, guys.
What's the motivation, Charles? Why, if you're the Texans, are you moving up right here? Who's the guy you're looking for?
I think if I'm looking at the Texans right here, I think that they saw that safety maybe potentially. My original thought was Emmanuel McNeil-Warren was going to be the safety that the Bears took. Now, granted, he was my number 3 safety, but by a lot of people, they really like this guy. So I was thinking that maybe they saw that that wasn't what was taken, and they moved up to go get a safety potentially. Their defense, one of the best defenses I have seen in a very long time, and the Texans can continue to stock that up. But at the same time, we could also see maybe an old line pick here. This just kind of reminds me of what the Seahawks were last year, where they took a very early pick with Gray Zabel, and people were a little bit kind of surprised at that. But this is a Texans team that doesn't need too much, maybe could reach a little bit for an old lineman to keep C.J. Stroud alive, because quite frankly, C.J. Stroud has been a shell of himself lately, and the best way to help a quarterback be better is give him a receiver and keep him off his behind, and hopefully they do something to fix one of those 2 things.
Well, Caden, they've decided to move up to chase after a player that says that there's somebody that they want. If you were in that room, is there anybody on the board that you're saying, I'm giving up anything for this guy?
I really think at this point in the draft, there's a lot of talent in that defensive backfield, but I don't know if that's what you're trading up for at this spot. So I'm in a weird position at this point. I'm not too sure.
I mean, you've got a couple of receivers. You got Cooper, you've got Boston, and then you go down into the edges. You've got Folk, you've got the D tackles and Peter Woods, Caden McDonald, excuse me. There's a lot of options that the Texans can go with, and I think that's probably what they wanted. That's why, I mean, obviously they saw something they wanted to trade up, but they're a team that I felt like underachieved last year. They were a team that I thought was going to make a decent run in the playoffs, but as Charles alluded to, C.J. Stroud just wasn't there, and I think part of that had to do with the offensive line. I understand maybe going with a defensive back, just improving an already great defense, making it that much better, getting some depth on it as well. I just think the offensive line is the place to go. You saw C.J. Stroud struggle the past 2 years.
If you're going to go anywhere, right?
And if this is a throwaway pick, why not just throw it at an offensive lineman?
It's never a bad pick if you're going offensive line.
And the biggest question I have is who? I only have 1 O-lineman left on my note sheet. Only one guy that I actually thought would go first or even top 16 in this, and I'm running out of them. So, I mean, is it the one that I have left, Jace?
Room right now with all the trades and graphics going on. Kalen Rutledge is the guy, though, out of Georgia Tech, heading to the Houston Texans. They needed an offensive guard horribly bad to protect C.J. Stroud. The Texans are always, I feel like, lacking in the offensive lineman department. They pick Kalen Rutledge here, 26, expecting him to be their plug-and-play guy.
Yeah, he's definitely a plug-and-play guy. 43 starts, kind of bounced around a little bit. He played for Georgia Tech last season and was probably one of the reasons why that run game and the quarterback in Haynes King, able to get things going. He's big, burly, strong, a tough guy, fights through injuries. He sustains blocks. Just a nasty offensive guard, and that's what you want if you're the Texans, a guy who's going to be the next step for you. Also a smooth guy in pass protection and run protection, moving up from linebacker, off double teams. A smooth guy. There is a couple problems, though. He lunges a little too much in pass pro. Is probably the biggest thing. Doesn't have the great body control down low, which that kind of goes to bull rush and being able to anchor. It doesn't have the great control in that aspect. Bull rush, like I said, can cause a lot of problems because that's what a lot of defensive tackles do. Defensive tackles don't have a ton in their bags usually, but they're really good at bull rush. So he's nasty in the run block. Pass protection probably more of a weaker spot for him. But you look at this running game with the Texans trying to help C.J. Stroud because we saw what C.J. Stroud did in the playoffs and a doozy 4 interceptions. So maybe going back to the run game isn't good for them. But like we've already said multiple times, the offensive line was where the Texans needed to go. And I think this guy is a plug and play and a guy that they needed. And he's a pretty good pick here.
I mean, if you watched any Georgia Tech football at all, probably knows most notably the Pop-Tarts Bowl at the end of the season where they played BYU, this is a great pickup just because of the style of offense they play. Haynes King was running behind one of the guards every single play. It did not matter. It felt like every play was a quarterback run or some sort of misdirection, and they found a way to get down the field, and it was a very efficient offense. I think you can bring that in. That skill is transferable. You can learn the pass pro. I'll ask you again, Nate, what's the drill? What do you work on to get better at that pass protection, or what is he missing, I guess, might be the better thing to say.
Well, it's all with lateral quickness and, being able to control lower body. So that means just, continuing reps, moving side to side, mirroring guys, and then, dealing with the different things because they're not going to bull rush you every time, right? There's going to be a lot of different things that come up, but being ready for everything. So that just means a lot of, one-on-one work, a lot of just, seeing things on film, knowing what's going to happen, tendencies of guys, and that's really going to help. Also, get a little lower body just a little stronger as well. That also can help, with the anchor, your back leg, being able to anchor up. Mm-hmm. But other than that, it's something that I would say is a weakness, but it's not something that, is awful and that he's not going to be able to fix it. It's something that he's just going to have to improve on as it goes on. He's had plenty of starts, and I think he's going to get it as it moves on. When I think of just one drill, you can't really put your finger on it, but it just comes with practice, especially because I think that's kind of the biggest thing. They didn't really throw a lot. And so when you look at Georgia Tech themselves, the run-heavy team, you can probably see why the pass protection maybe is a little lacking because they just didn't do it a lot. So more repetition in an NFL-style offense I think will help. And I think that just comes with practice and camp as well.
And Caden, you talked a little bit earlier about liking those guys who can get up quickly to the second level, make that second block on the linebacker, or even maybe get a crash down or a block on a crashing down safety. What does this provide for a team who, like we said, really, really struggled come postseason play?
I really think that this is going to elevate your game in the play action because, for one, you're going to see more effective reps in the run game. This is going to bring up, that front seven and allow C.J. Stroud to work in the play action. I feel like in C.J. Stroud's first couple years, he was able to move out of the pocket. He was able to showcase more of his legs and his arm. In the last few years, he has been caught under center, I feel, too much. He hasn't had a lot of time to throw the football, and the play action with an improved run game will give him that ability to move a little bit and find receivers downfield.
Charles, how do you see this? Is it a benefit? I mean, obviously pretty beneficial for a team struggling with the offensive line, but is it a good fit?
Yeah, I think it's a good fit. This is a team that needed a guard. There were two guards, in my opinion, available between him and Emmanuel Pregnan that I think were two guys that I would have picked here. And I think, you keep your quarterback off his behind and you're normally a pretty happy guy. And I think C.J. Stroud is now going to really benefit from this. And now we're going to take a look at another team that's going to have a few question marks here on where they want to go. They just lost a few people this offseason, and by a few, I mean just about everyone that is important Where do they go here, Chase?
Well, they needed a corner, they got a corner, and they got Chris Johnson out of San Diego State. But on the lighter side, just at 6 foot and 193, but one of the better corners in this draft. The Dolphins, they move up a spot or two and get Chris Johnson. Tell us a bit about Chris Johnson.
You know, he had a lot of questions going into the combine, but I think he proved a lot of people wrong on his athleticism and just his skill in general. Any doubts on him are really taken away. He's very physical, press-heavy cornerback. He has shown the ability to play against high-level receivers, which will carry over into the NFL.
So, guys, Chris Johnson, a guy who we weren't sure whether he'd fall in the first round or stick in the first round, and he ends up falling here at 27 to Miami. They needed a corner badly, and they go and get their guy.
I'd say that the draft really saved him from falling into that the combine, really saved him from falling into that second round, just because I look at 6 foot, 193, pretty undersized. There's a lot of guys that are going to bully him, you would think. But there are other things like jumping higher than the receiver. That can make up for a height discrepancy. There are a lot of different things. Being smart, having good technique. There are so many different things that you can learn as a cornerback to help you get a step up against a receiver to where size won't play as big of a factor. That's why I think that the Dolphins go with this pick. They blew up the offense. I think you start defensively where you already have a bit of a foundation over there. You can get something going there. That'll entice some people to come in through free agency. That's how, because they don't have the money to go out and get anybody. They're going to have to, someone's going to have to fall right into their lap, or they're going to have Will Howard and this guy.
I need to ask about McCoy at this point.
See, here's the thing about Jamal McCoy. I was talking to Jake about this before we began, and McCoy, he has some knee problems. He had a knee issue. He might need surgery, which could put him out for at least the first 5 or 6 games. That's the problem that teams are running into right now with him, because, yes, he is a great athlete, and I'm sure you know a bit about him as well, but McCoy, the knee issues are a really big red flag for him right now.
Thing for me, number one, I'll say there's not enough words in the English dictionary for me to explain how much I liked watching Chris Johnson's film. I got to watch his film. He was phenomenal. If he played anywhere other than the Mountain West, this kid would be in the same conversation of Mansour Delane. I think that his intangibles are very good. A press play guy that is very, like you said, kind of scrawny a little bit, but kind of reminds me a little bit of a slightly less polished Sauce Gardner. Very, very scrawny. Kind of plays a little bit physical. That is the way I liked watching Chris Johnson. It felt like I was back home whenever the Jets were, losing 3-14 like they do every season, and that's what I was enjoying when I was watching Chris Johnson. Chris Johnson has all the intangibles to be good. He had 4 interceptions. He was the highest rated G5 cornerback coming into the year, and he lived up exactly to that expectation. The number one thing, and I have this written down, he had tons of questions till the combine. How much you value the combine is up to you. That is the biggest question is, this kid was the most impressive cornerback in the combine, in my opinion, over Delane. But how much that means to you, that one's up to you.
The thing about the combine is sometimes it can be some eye candy. I mean, you can see the numbers, you can see the stats. Oh, this guy ran a 4.5, this guy ran a 4.4, but it doesn't always matter. It's what happens on the field. I think this is a guy that kind of proved both. And you look at his size and say, yeah, he might be the underdog, but I don't think he looks at himself as the underdog. He looks at himself as the best player on the field at all times. So not a bad pickup there for the Dolphins. They'll continue to build, hopefully make their way back into playoff contention. We'll see if things in Miami get a little bit brighter. But that brings us to our next pick, the New England Patriots. They made it to the Super Bowl this year, came up just short. I think there's a lot of different ways you could go with this team, but let's see where they go, Jace.
And things are moving so quickly. I haven't even announced the trade for this yet, but they moved up with Buffalo. So Buffalo's now traded back from 26 to 28 and then 28 to 31. The Patriots, though, they select Caleb Lomu from Utah. He's the other Utah tackle that we mentioned earlier. Obviously, Fano went earlier. Now Lomu goes. The Patriots, they get some more protection for Drake May, which you probably needed watching the Super Bowl back. He was getting killed and mauled at times. So they get their guy in Caleb Lomu. They trade up and they waste a, I think, 4th-round pick as well in that trade with the Buffalo Bills.
And before we go any further, one thing we need to talk about is what does this mean for Will Campbell? Does that mean he's moving positions? Does that mean that Lomu's moving positions? I mean, this could have a lot of further implications for this Patriots offense. And look at Caleb Lomu, 6'6", 313. Tyler Gutton, is kind of the player comp for him. Started for 2 straight seasons for Utah. Only allowed 2 sacks in those 2 years. 0 in this last season. He's got good frame. He's room for a little more muscle, but very athletic. And you're seeing that trend now with offensive linemen, being able to, be more athletic against these faster, more athletic defensive ends. I'm seeing some looks over here. There's some big.
There's more trades happening again.
More trades, but
the Jets are up to number 30 now.
Yes! So Jets at 30, going back into it. Back though to Caleb Lumu just for a second. Has good hands. Able to move quickly. One of the biggest problems with him though, and the reason why I think he fell is because of the feet. You look at him. He gallops sometimes in his pass protection. He moves a little bit. In the side to side, slips a little bit, just needs more harmony between his feet. And that's pretty much every single weakness that you have listed has something to do with his inability to move his feet or an inability to, be confident in his feet and footwork.
It's no question that the big problem in the Super Bowl was the offensive line. I think Drake May would have been 10 times better had he had maybe half a second more to make a decision back there. So you bring up a good point, Nate, and did you have a thought on that? Do you think they move one or the other, or just keep them stacked on top of each other and have them play 1 and 2?
When I look at Will Campbell, I didn't love him coming into the Patriots. Shorter arms. Same thing with Ruben Bain. It's how much does that affect going against a faster rusher? And when I look at Caleb Lumu, I think he's a better left tackle than Will Campbell. I think Will Campbell may be moved inside. I think that's my opinion, but we'll see what the Patriots do. It may be one of those cases where it's an open tryout. Who's going to be the left tackle, and it's more a little competition. Maybe to hope that Will Campbell takes the next step, because he did deal with some injuries. He was solid, for a good portion of the season, but injuries, really declined his play.
I'm an LSU guy. I got the opportunity to do Will Campbell's scout card last year, and I was going to be my biggest note for him, and it's very similar to what Jackson said with Sadiq, is could potentially be moved to guard in 2 to 3 years due to his intangibles. The talent's there, but the arms are too short for a tackle, and this could be their way of saying, hey, maybe we move him to guard. Maybe they see what I saw. I don't know, because I do like this opportunity of, I think Lomu is one of the better tackles in this draft. And like we said, Drake May, I have genuinely seen less gruesome fights in UFC than I saw what he had to deal with in the Seahawks game. So he has the opportunity to be protected. That right side of the O-line was atrocious in the Super Bowl. And now you bring in a guy that has so much potential. On top of bringing in a top guard, I like this here, no matter which one they do, whether they have them as a placeholder, but you don't take a first-round pick as a placeholder. There is a plan here that's a little bit deeper than what they have. There is no way I don't see one of these guys moving to guard to replace the one half of the problem that was last year's Super Bowl.
You mentioned the potential. I think that's probably a good word to put on this guy, because he can build that frame up very, very well. He could become one of those big, bulky interior linemen, or he could stay on the outside. I think there's a lot of mobility that they have with these two guys. And the Patriots, if there's anybody who's going to figure it out, I think it's them. Mike Vrabel, if he figures out whatever he's got going on the side, if he gets that sorted out, I think they're going to develop this guy into a true Pro Bowl talent. I mean, he has that opportunity, and this is typically where I think we see those guards that end up being Pro Bowlers, usually from 20 to 30. That's about where I tend to remember seeing them. But we'll move on to our next pick. A team that has already been active in this draft is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll see what they have up. Is there anything on your mind right now, Caden? Anything screaming, I want that right now?
Any other year, I think we're seeing a wide receiver off the board at this point. I think Omar Cooper Jr. would be a good option in Kansas City, perhaps. But I'm not sure if this is the right value that you're getting from Omar Cooper Jr. at this point in the draft.
All right, Jace. I guess I'll throw it over to you. Who is our next pick, buddy?
It's about time, Jake. Thank you. It's Peter Woods. He is heading to the Kansas City Chiefs. They go D tackle. We thought maybe a receiver because there'll be an order for the Chiefs here. No, it is in fact the defensive tackle and Peter Woods, who I thought was for sure a first-round talent. And they do indeed go with Peter Woods, a defensive tackle, as they bulk up that defensive line a little bit in Kansas City.
And when you look at Peter Woods as a prospect, he was top 10 nationally coming out of high school. We've been hearing about Peter Woods in this Clemson defensive line for it feels like 3 years. Like this is going to be the group that's going to get over the hump. But when we look at the team overall, Clemson, they struggled as a team overall. Lost some games that they probably shouldn't have lost. But you look at Peter Woods as a player, very explosive athlete, being able to move quickly with defenders. When you look at some of the weaknesses that Peter Woods have, it's kind of some of the same ones that we've seen with some of the other guys like Ruben Bain. Shorter arms, so it makes it harder to get off blocks and that type of thing. And then also, has a little bit of a problem with just finding a good move. And what I mean by that, usually pass rushers have a move, and defensive tackles, it's a little bit harder. You have a bull rush and a couple swim moves and stuff like that. He doesn't really have one that sticks out, right? So sometimes he maybe seems like he's, kind of stuck in the move, right? Because he doesn't really know what he wants to do. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit of I would say a weakness, but really it's something that I think will improve over time, and something that it's not really a big thing to worry about, really.
He's been a top prospect since he was in high school. He was top 10 nationally, first-team All-American, Alabama Player of the Year as a senior. He got it done, and I think we're going to continue to see that same level of production here at the NFL level. Caden, good pick, bad pick. How are we feeling?
I think 6'2", 298 at the tackle position is somewhat undersized compared to what we've seen go off the board tonight. And when I look at that, I had to catch myself because I was thinking, well, I don't know if this guy's going to win you a Super Bowl, but what are we talking about here, right? I mean, you have to, especially at this point in the draft, find value. Find the right spot, find the right position to find your guys. And I think that Peter Woods has one of the highest floors that we're going to see in this draft, especially at the D-tackle spot.
He has a very good ability to get in there and disrupt the pocket, even break the pocket sometimes, just completely put the quarterback in shambles, and that is something that could definitely be of use to a Kansas City team who we've said has struggled a little bit with the run game over recent years. I think this is a good start in the right direction because they really haven't had that elite defensive line for, about 5-6 years now since that first run.
That's when they were really good. That's when they were at their best.
It's when you knew there was no doubt, but then you get to the 2 years later, the run defense is bad. It turns into the secondaries also trash. You get the Buccaneers, blow them out like 45-16. That can't happen if you're the Patrick Mahomes coming off of injury. They've given him a little bit on the offensive line. Now they're going to move over to the defense. Give him a little bit of support over there. But we move on to our next pick. Charles, you were happy, not happy?
Chase, I can't wait any longer. Who did we pick?
The Jets, they got a receiver, Omar Cooper Jr. out of Indiana University. IU gets 2 first-round picks in one season as Omar Cooper Jr. is heading to the New York Jets. Omar Cooper had a phenomenal breakout season at IU, obviously with the number 1 overall pick, Mendoza, as his quarterback. This guy is a phenomenal athlete and is going to fit right into a receiver-needy team right now, Jackson.
Yeah, they needed a receiver. They thought about Omar Cooper at 16. They decided to go a different way. They get him in the long run, and it definitely pays off. You get your receiver you needed. His issue, we've talked about it all day. I feel like just keep repeating, he has shorter arms. Mm-hmm. He can't go and get the tough catches. He's not going to win a contested catch ball. That's where he struggled. But at the same time, he's able to break tackles 40% of his catches. He's able to make space when there is no space, and that's a strong suit, is the run after the catch, and I think he'll be great. I think he'll fit in. I think that's what the Jets need is that yak yardage, and he'll definitely help.
I like Omar Cooper Jr. As a wide receiver, one of the most complete in this draft class, no doubt. But his catch radius does scare me just a hair, considering the Jets don't exactly have Peyton Manning under center, which is hard to ask for, especially this year and in a market where a great quarterback really is fleeting. We're not seeing that level of quarterback that up and runs away from the rest of the league anymore. It's not like Patrick Mahomes is just falling to that 13th pick, right? So we're seeing 1 or 2 guys every year coming out of college that are really finding some success in the league, but this is where you pick him. Omar Cooper Jr. could not let him slide to day 2. He's too talented, can provide too much, and he's only getting better.
Charles, as the Jets guy, how are we feeling about this pick? I think the initial reaction might be a little bit different from how you're feeling right now.
No, my initial reaction, I borderline could have jumped out of my seat. Darren Mugi, I apologize so much. I apologize for ever doubting you because, God, did we need a receiver so bad. And this was one of the guys that I wanted. Mekhi Lemon, Omar Cooper were the two of the guys that I think would fall towards 16 or 33, and we traded up to get him. Whenever I heard that we traded up, I knew we were getting a receiver. I knew it was either him or Boston, and I've been excited. I was hoping it wasn't Boston because I'm a much bigger Cooper fan. And yes, we do have Geno Smith behind center, and that's not exactly the guy I would trust with my life.
But he's not terrible.
He's not
either.
horrible.
He's proven that he can put the ball where he needs to put the ball
Exactly.
at a high level, which is all you need.
And Omar Cooper's going to be a good guy for that. And I think that's what I need. Because the issue is we always fall under this Jets problem of we draft the guy that we need first round, and we draft Billy Bob Joe and Billy Bob Joe Jr., and then we draft a receiver. This year, we actually went out and got a receiver.
No Billy Bob Joe here.
No Billy Bob Joe here, and we don't know what Sadiq is going to be. So I'm very, very happy with this move. I think that this was the move that was needed. 3 first-round picks for the Jets. Just a little bit of preview of what's going to happen next year as well, as the Jets also have 3 first-round picks. But thank goodness that we finally get a receiver because, like I said, Garrett Wilson was the only guy that had half a brain cell in that Jets receiver.
I was going to say, I'm just hoping they don't do what they did to Garrett Wilson. I mean, they've darn near run his career into the ground. He started off as the Offensive Player of the Year, and it has been bad quarterback after bad quarterback after bad quarterback, and this is maybe the next one in line, I feel like, if you're Geno Smith. You're going to have to step up your game. He did what he needed to do this past year, but it's going to have to go up to the next level. I think that he is going to be the make or break of whether this pick is actually a good one, because if he can't get the ball to him, it doesn't matter what receivers they have. If Garrett Wilson can't get the ball thrown to him in a spot where he can catch it, don't matter. It's going to be bad plays for the Jets, but we'll move on to our next pick. The Tennessee Titans, they were up earlier in the draft. They now come back around, one of the few teams to have a number or a second pick here in the first round. Charles, before we head over to Jace, I'll turn to you. What is the thing you're looking for here for a team who really is just now getting started in their rebuild with Cam Ward?
Well, they got one of their guys. They got a little bit of help in the beginning of the draft, and now I'm looking to start maybe looking at the defensive end. I think that this is where I would go with a defender here. You know, you brought in a little bit of offense, bring in a little bit of defense, because like we said, the Titans, they need just about everything. They have their quarterback, I think a guy that has potential to be the quarterback of the future in Cam Ward. They could use a running back. I could see them doing the Jadarian Price if they really wanted to at this point. But I would not take that here. I'm going defense.
I think that's going to be a late round. Maybe, I mean, there's a chance that Price falls quite a bit into the second day. I mean, there's a chance that happens, and I think the Titans would be sitting there very hungry, ready to grab him if he does. But as we look at this, Caden, they pick up Carnell Tate with their first pick, second one. You're thinking defense, you thinking offense again?
I think on what's left on the board, especially here for the first day, really defense heavy. And the question from there is, do you add to the secondary or do you plug the holes up front? And really, if you wanted to pick up Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, he'd be a great pick. I'm still a Jermon McCoy guy. I hate to see him fall to the second day if he indeed does fall out of the first round. But if you do find a spot on the edge, find a guy that you like, you have a couple of viable options there with T.J. Parker still out there, Kendrick Falk.
Well, maybe we'll hear their names called. Jace is going to give us one of our final picks of the day. Jace, What are we hearing?
We never even discussed why Tennessee is picking here. It's because Buffalo traded back for a third time. They went from 26 to 28 to 31, now to 33 or 34, one of the ones with the Titans. Either way, they traded back 3 different times. But the Titans, they go with an edge rusher. They needed one earlier. I thought they went with Carnell Tate instead. Now they go get their guy at edge, and it's Keldrick Falk out of Auburn, a first-round talent kind of guy. Interesting pick here for the Titans. Landon, tell us a bit about Falk.
Yeah, he's really one of the more intriguing prospects for me at edge because his frame is so great. He's got such a big body. He has incredible anchor ability. He's got the potential to be a 2-gap type of defender. He's great against the run, but not too good against the pass. He can kind of struggle with those counters, just kind of struggle turning the corner, just those quick type of movements, things you would kind of expect this type of bigger body player to struggle with. He kind of has those defensive edge, also interior defensive lineman skills, kind of a mix of that. So it'll be interesting to see how Tennessee uses him. But I was very interested to see if anybody decided to pick Keldrick Falk in the first round because I think he has very high upside, and if they can develop him, he could probably be one of the best edges in this draft.
And I would call it a very good draft so far for the Titans. They got their 2 biggest needs in the first round, a receiver and edge rusher. Tate and Falk both heading to Tennessee right now, guys.
I like it as well, and I think you're seeing just once again that the SEC is just that much better when it comes to offensive linemen. Or defensive linemen, offensive linemen, doesn't matter. I was going to ask you guys about this earlier, but what is it about the SEC or the Big Ten that makes those linemen just that much more desirable, almost automatic first-round pick, Caden?
It's the level of competition. It has to be, because especially in the day and age of NIL, your talent in the SEC and the Big Ten is so top-heavy. It's a difference between playing Toledo or even Louisville every year, right, than Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee. If you're looking for guys that can come in and make the day one impact, you're looking for guys who have done it against NFL players, and that's what you're getting out of the big programs in the Big Ten and in the SEC.
Folk to the Titans. That brings us up to our 32nd and final pick of the draft. The Seattle Seahawks, the reigning Super Bowl champions. There's a big question of where do they go? There is one guy that I'm thinking might fill one of their biggest needs in Jadarian Price. That's where I'm thinking. Jace, what is going on over there? What is your thought on this? Seattle, where do they go?
Well, Seattle, they definitely need a running back because they lost Kenneth Walker, obviously, to Kansas City. They need to find a running back, and you would expect that Jerry Price might be the guy here. Obviously, the pick currently is in. We're waiting on official confirmation, but we'll get to them when they do. But I would expect that Price is the very hot candidate right now in Seattle.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that because we take a look at where this team is at right now, and this is a team that does not need defense. I can tell you that much. No defense needed there. Receiver, not really needed there. They don't really need O-line either, so honestly, I mean, you might as well take running back. This is one of those picks that either you trade or you just take Price. But honestly, I'm not overthinking it here. I'm just taking Jadarian Price.
I do. Well, we'll get into this after in our post breakdown, but I'm really wondering what the Bills are going through right now because I cannot understand what they've got going on in that room. We'll talk it out. Jace, you have our final pick of the draft.
The Seattle Seahawks do indeed draft Jadarian Price at 32. They get their running back of what I would consider the future here with Jadarian Price. Caitlin, that's now the second Irish back off the board. This is one that we predicted all the way back in the pre-show. Price to Seattle. I think this was the right fit for the Seahawks.
I do think it was a great pick for them, and we did say number 32 Seahawks were going to take Price, and we were right. I mean, I think he has a really quick footwork, and he has the ability to make decisions without delay, unlike Love, who kind of has some hesitation. So I do think, like you said, he is the future of running backs.
I know, as an Irish fan, I've watched him a little bit. He does kind of have some concerns with his ball carrying ability, with fumbling occasionally. He had some loose ones towards the goal line in the previous seasons, but he is very quick. He also has an explosive ability out in the backfield. So, and for him to be a first-round pick when he was splitting carries the way he was with Jeremiah Love, absolutely impressive. Guys, the Seahawks get the running back, Jadarian Price, 2 Irish backs off the board.
Jadarian Price is the 32nd pick. Let's go ahead and get your initial reactions, fellas. I don't think it's a surprise to me. I think it's a great fit and exactly what Seattle needed. Charles?
Sometimes the pick just works. Sometimes it just does. You don't overthink it sometimes, especially whenever you're coming off of a Super Bowl. And I think that the biggest thing for me there is we're taking a look now at a team that is so talented, almost as perfect as you can get, and you just make it just a little bit better. McDaniel liked to have the split carries. They lose Kenneth Walker. Charbonnet's not going to be the only option for them anymore because we already know that they don't like to only have one option. They like the 2 options, like I say, remnant of the 49ers back in the day before they brought in CMC. They also ran 2, maybe 3 guys with Mostert, McKinnon. So we're going to see that a little bit now with this team bringing in that second option of Jadarian Price, who split carries with Love and did a very solid job with him. But then you also have Charbonnet, who is an end zone guy. I think Price is going to be a little bit more of the home run play, a little bit more of the 30, 40-yard down the field, and then you bring in Charbonnet to just bullhead down the middle of your great O-line and score those easy touchdowns. So I think if you're a Jadarian Price fan, I wouldn't necessarily get him a fantasy because Charbonnet is going to get all those touchdowns, but he's going to be great for the Seahawks team as he helps them get up the field a little bit better with all these weapons that they have.
And this gives Price a real opportunity to come in day one and assert yourself as really one of the top backs in the league. Volume-wise, he's going to see a lot of touches. He's going to see a lot of effective touches in an offense that's going to utilize him a lot. If I'm Price, I love this spot in the draft. I don't slip to day 2, and I find a team that's going to love me all year.
Well, with 32 picks in, there can only be one best pick of the 32. We'll start with you over there, Charles. What would you consider to be the best pick, maybe the most valuable, or maybe just one you think, man, that is the best fit that guy possibly could have gotten? Where are you looking right now, sir?
Man, you really put me on the spot here, bro. You really put me on the spot because I was sitting there thinking about who I really liked seeing go. And honestly, I think the Eagles bringing in Mekhi Lemon. I got to say, I mean, the rich get richer. Like you said, there are two possible good options for this. They have another receiver. Oh, no, what's the problem with that? Or they lose A.J. Brown, and then they once again have a replacement for him. There is literally no downfall. The only downfall that Mekhi Lemon could possibly have is that there are three brands of football wide receivers. There's the normal wide receiver, the diva wide receiver, and this new brand that Mekhi Lemon's bringing with him, the borderline psychopath wide receiver. I'm a little bit afraid of him off the field. A little bit. I'm not going to lie, watching him walk up to that sign terrified me. But he is very extremely talented, and jarring the way that he stays on the court, on the field, if he can stay on the field, I think that's going to be the biggest thing for him is if he's on the field, he's going to produce, and the Eagles once again have a guy that hopefully Jalen Hurts likes because the A.J. Brown thing has not been working out too well for them.
Well, he wasn't in Georgia, and he's not heading to Las Vegas, so I'd say he's probably sitting in pretty good position right now, at least off the field. Jace, we'll go to you. What do you feel was the best pick or the most valuable today?
I knew as soon as it came in, this was going to be my pick here. Ruben Bain to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They needed an edge rusher horribly bad. Ruben Bain, to me, is a top 5 talent in this draft. The short arms don't matter that much. Yes, they're shorter than the average size of an edge rusher should be, but this guy is a freak athlete. And for Tampa Bay to get him at 15, that is the best possible scenario for not only Tampa Bay, but for Ruben Bain as well, because that is a perfect fit and a perfect system down in Tampa.
Over to you, boss man. What was the best pick of the draft?
Pick number 7 and Sonny Styles. We forget how close Washington was to making it to the Super Bowl in Jayden Daniels' rookie year. They were really, really good. Jayden Daniels was at that point the best quarterback in the NFC. So you give the best quarterback in the NFC a defense that he can rely on that's already okay and gets a lot better with a guy that gets to control what those interior gaps look like. I think he could be a game changer, a season changer, a franchise changer if he lives up to his potential. Maybe not this first year, but in years to come. Commanders are going to be scary. They got their guy at a great spot, and I think that he's going to be super impactful.
I'll tell you my pick. Carnell Tate to number 4 to the Titans. This was the best pick in my mind. You could say it was a reach, but the Titans knew what they wanted and they went out and got it. And I think that is the most important part of any draft. It's something that we've seen the Green Bay Packers do at times. They see someone they want, they go get that person. And I think that's exactly what the Titans did in this draft. We talk about them rebuilding. Of all the teams we talked about today, I think they're in the best position to start that rebuild this year. You're giving Cam Ward another weapon. You're giving Cam Ward now someone on the other side. You have what you need if you're the Titans to start making that push to be one of the better teams in that division. The Colts, I mean, I know we talk Colts sports here in Indianapolis, but I don't know that they're going to be the same team they were. It was nowhere to be found for the rest of the season. Can they pick that horse back up and get back on it? I don't know. That would be the perfect opportunity, though, for the Titans to come in, swoop in, and be that second team right behind Houston, because I still think Jacksonville is a fraud. I think anytime they make it out of the 5-win category, you could still consider them a fraud. But to me, Carnell Tate is an explosive player that instantly makes a difference on this Titans offense.
Adding to that point, both Indianapolis and Jacksonville had 0 first-round picks today. Those are teams that did not get any better today. For the Titans to find a weapon like that, add some depth, which they desperately need. Cam Ward's going to get increasingly better, I think, by magnitudes. And as you say, they can be scary pretty quick.
And we'll let one person speak for us all. Jace, I feel like you are the expert on this topic. Was there anything that you hated today? Was there a pick that you said, that might have been the worst decision I have ever seen? I know Jackson had his opinion, but we'll head over to you, Jace. What was the bad pick of the first round, if there was one?
I hate to keep dogging on the guy because he genuinely is not that bad. I just don't like him as a player, and that's Kenyon Sadiq at 16 to the Jets. Obviously, that was formerly the Colts pick, so I'm actually pretty happy that they actually muffed this pick horribly, because Sadiq to me was not the fit for this Jets team, and they didn't tight end at this point. Obviously, we heard that they considered Cooper at 16. They eventually traded back up and got their guy at pick number 30, but Sadiq wasn't a need for this Jets team, and he just isn't a great tight end, in my opinion.
I don't think this is necessarily a muffed pick if they got what they needed. The reason why I was so against this pick was one reason. They need a receiver. You know what they got today? They got a receiver. You know what they don't have any depth of? Tight end. I mean, if Mason Miller doesn't play, I mean, Mason Taylor, God, dude, I just keep on getting my sports stuck. If Mason Taylor doesn't play as well, or if Mason Taylor doesn't play, then Kenyon Sadiq brings in that nice versatility. He could be used in some interesting trick plays that I do like. So I'm not going to say they muffed the pick because they got the receiver. Now, if they went and didn't get a receiver or got some bum in the 3rd or 4th round, then it's a muff pick. But they made the move. They slapped it on the table, and they said, I want Omar Cooper. And now they bring in some players that I think are going to be really, really talented for them. And like we said, they needed receivers bad. They got 2 people that can catch the ball for Geno Smith. And the offense has gotten just a little bit better in New York. I mean, they're a far cry away from any playoff potential, but a little bit better today, and bringing in a guy that we've never seen before. We can't say it's not going to work if we've never seen it before. So that's, to me, is the biggest interesting what if. I think, yes, it could be arguably the play that we sit back and say this was horrible, or we could say this was revolutionary if they do something that we've never seen and it ends up working. So I think only time will tell, but this is definitely one of those picks that reminds me of Jackson Dart. I didn't like it last year, but it ended up working. So we'll see if it's one of those picks, but I don't think it was muffed as bad as people were going to say, and as bad as I was thinking at first, because we were on break, but I wailed. I let out a cry whenever I saw that we picked Sadiq over Mekhi Lemon. So I'm happy now, definitely with us getting a receiver, and I think that it's definitely in a better stage than it could have been.
I think for once there's going to be more happy fans than there were upset fans after tonight's draft. Lots of teams getting a lot of good players, and these players are the guys you're going to be seeing every Sunday night come September. It was a good draft. It was a fun time. Thank you to our NFL insider, Jace Hodge, as well as my fellow analysts, Caden Colford and Charles Foster, on top of all of our specialists, Landon McQuitty, Heaven Thompson, Jackson Strasburger, and everybody else who participated in the back room. We greatly appreciate all the help that we had in putting on this long event. We couldn't do it without our squad here at UINDY TV. But from the south side of Indianapolis, saying so long, my name is Jake Helton, and this was the UINDY TV Draft, guys.